test against India with a shoulder injury.
Obviously very disappointed, but just almost needed a bit more time than normally would give to these kind of things to make a decision, and helps that we've got a really good, strong squad to be able to select from to put a team out there that we think can get us a win this week.
Scans revealed a grade 3 tear, the most severe category, meaning he now faces 6 to 10 weeks of rehabilitation. Ollie Pope now takes the captain's armband, while Jacob Bethel bats at 6. And fast bowlers Jamie Overton, Gus Atkinson and Josh Tongue come in for Jofra Archer, Bryden Cass and spinner Liam Dawson. England are heading into the series decider at the Oval 2-1. Overseas viewers can catch live coverage on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel. Up on Teesside, will Newcastle fans be upset with Alexander Isak for wanting to go to Liverpool, or the way he's gone about it? The Daily Mail's chief football writer, Craig Hope, reckons it's the latter.
If this didn't happen, and there's a lot of reasons why it couldn't happen, how he's then reintegrated to the fold with his teammates and, by extension, supporters, that might be a little more difficult than it perhaps could and should have been.
talkSPORT understands Liverpool are willing to pay a British record fee for the Swedish striker. We're also reliably informed Newcastle have already opened talks with Benjamin Sesko, who's also on Man United's list of targets. Granit Xhaka to Sunderland is a done deal. talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook believes it's a signing that will go a long way to keep the Black Cats up this season.
Granit Xhaka brings that much-needed Premier League experience, and it's a big call from him to leave Bayer Leverkusen, where he's had a couple of successful seasons, obviously played in the Champions League, to take a step into a relegation battle. I think tells you about his character.
And Luis Diaz says he's fulfilled his duty at Liverpool after completing a £65 million move to Bayern Munich. The Colombian signed a 4-year deal with the Bundesliga champions. You can grab all the latest transfer lines at talksport.com.
A very good evening. This is the Transfer Insiders on the world's biggest sports radio station, talkSPORT. It's Sam Ellard, Harry Symeou with you until 10, bringing you all of the day's biggest transfer stories, done deals and rumours, and there's plenty to get through. talkSPORT understands Manchester United have opened talks for Benjamin Sesko after sending a delegation to Germany to meet with Leipzig officials. He's one of two active options to Manchester United, along with Aston Villa striker Ollie Watkins. Man United fans, Sesko or Watkins? 03717 223344. Elsewhere today, Liverpool's financial position has been strengthened prior to that potential bid for Alexander Isak after Luis Diaz completed his move to Bayern Munich. What now for Liverpool and what now for Isak? Plus, we're talking Man United and goalkeepers, getting the lowdown on Arsenal with Harry, and we're talking Chelsea. Lots of good attacking players through the door, but surely, if Chelsea to have any chance next season of competing, they've got to strengthen in goal and at the back. There is so much to get through on the Transfer Insiders. The number to call if you want to get involved, 03717 223344. And a very good evening to Harry Symeou. How are you?
How's it going, mate?
We're good. We're bubbling along nicely. It's felt like a day where things are moving pretty quickly. And, getting to that period now where we're a couple of weeks away until the season starts, a few weeks to go until the window closes, and just feels as if the last sort of 48 hours, things are starting to maybe move a little bit more. Because it was busy before the Club World Cup, and then maybe it felt like it quieted down a little bit, and now it feels like it's ramping up.
It's all getting a little bit more intense now, isn't it? Not only have we got transfer sagas ongoing, and we got clubs in some cases scrambling around to do business because they haven't managed to achieve what they wanted to so far in this window, and we've got the pre-season friendlies in there. You factor all of that in, and it's just a little bit hectic again, which is nice because we're kind of building up to the new season, and it's going to be all systems go. before you know it. I mean, it's not long till the EFL comes back. So,
well, 2 days and pretty much in 49 hours.
Exactly. So it's back upon us.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get straight into it then, Harry. I guess kind of the big story today is the talkSPORT understands that Manchester United have opened talks for Benjamin Sesko after sending a delegation to Germany to meet with Leipzig officials. Newcastle fear being hijacked by Man United, even though Ruben Amorim would prefer to sign, interestingly, Ollie Watkins. The chief negotiator, Matt Hargreaves, arrived a few days ago. The United aware they have to move fast, with Newcastle also pushing for the signature. Of course, you'll know this. Leipzig quoted Arsenal a price in excess of 80 million euros for Sesko earlier this window. Of course, Arsenal, as we now know, looked elsewhere. But both Newcastle and Manchester United believe a transfer could be possible closer to 70 million euros. But Sesko is one of two active options in Manchester United, along with Watkins. Now, we understand Villa don't wish to sell the English striker, but United may still persist with talks and even test that resolve with a bid. They have not yet ruled out making a formal offer, albeit one below Villa's £60 million valuation. So, Harry, straight to it. From Manchester United point of view, Sesko or Watkins, who would you go for?
I think if I'm Man United, I'm going for Watkins. I think Benjamin Sesko's got the bigger potential upside in that he's obviously younger. I think he's got a very, very good reputation. He's got a lot of the raw attributes that you would say, you know, put him in a really good position to go on and become one of Europe's best strikers. And whenever I listen to like some of our European football experts, Andy Brassel, Kevin Hatchard, they always talk so glowingly of Benjamin Sesko. But then you look at his goal record from last season, and I know you can't judge him solely based on that, but it isn't particularly inspiring. You do wonder, you know, what the guy's character is like. I can't say he's got a bad character because I don't know him, but, you know, you think about what's happened with Arsenal, and I'm coming at this from an Arsenal point of view, right? So maybe I'm going to be a bit biased in that sense, but here's a guy that had an opportunity to come to the Premier League and lead the line for one of the Premier League challengers, has decided, in my opinion, not to push at all for that move, signed a new contract at RB Leipzig last summer that puts him in a really weak negotiating position with regards to his current club, because they slapped a ridiculous price tag on him early on in this window. Arsenal tried, Arsenal worked on it, couldn't get it done. And now what I find particularly interesting is, you know, Manchester United and Newcastle are in the mix, two clubs that really do need to strengthen in that area. But how far are they willing to go? How close are they willing to go to get to that price point that RB Leipzig have set? Or are RB Leipzig going to come down on their price? And if they do, then doesn't that tell you, I don't know, it just doesn't smell right to me. Like if he was being quoted as a 90 million euro player, which is what Arsenal were allegedly quoted, 90 million euros, and then you sell him for 70 a couple of weeks later, it just feels to me like there's something, there's a disconnect somewhere. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up.
I think from a United point of view, I actually think the two signings that they've made in this window are really, really good signings. Now, we've known for a long, long period of time, for pretty much the best part of a decade, their recruitment has been pretty much woeful, whether it's young players, whether it's experienced players, Premier League proven players, players from abroad. Pretty much everyone has gone to Manchester United and have failed. But the reason why I like the two signings is they are proven in the Premier League. Now, I completely get and appreciate there are teams that don't have the same expectation as playing as Manchester United. But Brian Mbeumo's numbers and consistency and performances at Brentford, in particular last season, exceptional. I think Matheus Cunha as well has proven at Wolves what top player he is, and I think they're ready to make that step up. I can't believe if it's a choice between Watkins and Sesko, I would absolutely 100% go with Ollie Watkins. I just think right now that Sesko is much more of a gamble. Ollie Watkins is proven in the Premier League. I think his numbers, 75 goals in 184 games. I think his numbers in the Premier League are so much better than people give him credit for. I think his movement's good. He's consistent. He can link play pretty well. And I'm really, really surprised that whether it was Arsenal fans in January turning their nose up at Watkins, and here Man United going down the Sesko route, I think Watkins will be absolutely perfect to go in and lead that line.
I think the problem is here, though, Sam, is that we're looking at it from a purely footballing perspective, right? So if you look at Watkins versus Sesko, you look at, you know, the footballing sort of credibility that both of those have, right? So one of them has done it in the Premier League time and time again.
Consistently and regularly over a 2-3 year period.
Exactly, regularly, and played to a really high standard, and works incredibly hard for his team, by the way, as well. That probably goes under the radar a little bit.
All-round Watkins is a really, really good all-rounded centre forward. For
sure. And I would argue that Benjamin Sesko, in the long term, maybe has a higher ceiling than someone like Ollie Watkins. But then you've got to wait, like we're just looking at it through a footballing lens. I think you've got to look for it through two lenses, though. Does it make sense from a football perspective, and does it make sense from a business perspective? Now, someone at Ollie Watkins' age, you're going to be reluctant to drop mega money on that deal. And I think if you're Manchester United and you are looking at Benjamin Sesko as the priority, it will be in part because you think the Sesko deal makes more business sense. And that's where I think, as fans nowadays, we're struggling to connect with some of the transfers we're seeing and some of the transfer fees that we're hearing clubs are paying, because we're looking at it as, is he a good player? Will he come in? Will he improve my team? And clubs are looking at the much broader and wider picture. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that is a big factor. To spend that kind of money on a 28, 29-year-old.
But it says here, talkSPORT's Alex Crook reported today, Man United have not yet ruled out making a formal offer, albeit one below Villa's £60 million valuation. Again, in 2025, with some of the numbers and figures that have been bandied around for other players, I know he's 29, Watkins, but I would say £60 million for Ollie Watkins, an international striker, with the record that I read out earlier, the goals, the consistency. I wouldn't say that's paying over the odds. I completely get and appreciate that he's a bit older than Šeško. I would just say, maybe I am just looking at this from a pure footballing point of view. And Manchester United last season weren't too far away from the bottom three. They need players that are ready to come in now. And I'm not saying that Šeško wouldn't do well. I just think Watkins is more of a sure fit to come in, adapt well, score goals, hit the ground running. And it's interesting then, what I read out earlier from Alex Crook, Ruben Amorim prefers Ollie Watkins. And that doesn't surprise me, because we know Ruben Amorim next season has got to get off to a quick start.
Do you think we put too much value, though, on the whole Premier League proven thing? Do you not think if you're a good player, you're going to adapt and it's going to work regardless?
But I think that's something to factor in, though, when talking about players, knowing what the league's like. Yeah, sure, it's not obviously players coming from abroad and do well. But I think it's something to factor in, 100%.
I look at Man United's business so far, Sam, and I look at what they've done, and they've brought in Cunha, who I think they've slightly overpaid for. I think they've overpaid for Brian Mbeumo.
Well, you said on a previous show here you think they've had their pants pulled down.
Yeah, I do. I think they've paid way over the top. I think they've paid way over the top to sign those two players. Now, if those players are a hit, then nobody's going to talk about the fee, and rightly so. People are going to focus on the fact that actually what Manchester United have done is adjusted their approach rather than bringing in young players like Højlund, like Xerxes, who sort of impressed elsewhere, and they sort of paid big fees on them and sort of rolled the dice. Instead, they're going, these players are doing it in this league, week in, week out, let's bring them in. The only adaptation they need to go through is being able to kind of handle the scrutiny that comes for playing for a club like Manchester United.
And that's when I talk about being a Premier League proven quality centre-forward.
Fine, but at the same time, Manchester United are in this situation whereby they're having to make big changes. They're having to revamp the squad because over the last few years, they have overpaid for players. Yeah. And if I was a Manchester United fan, while I might look at these two and think they're good signings, there would be this tiny part of me, there'd be this nagging voice telling me that actually, is there a danger that we're doing what we've done before and we're doing it with older players who are going to have even less of a sell-on value? And if they don't get us to where we need to be, which is back in the positions competing for Europe, we could be in an even worse position than we were at the outset. That would be my worry if I was a United fan.
But I think in particular with the Højlund and Xerxes signings, who came in for similar-ish fees than what we've spoken about with Cunha and Bremer, around that kind of £60-70 million mark. Young players who have come in and pretty much from the get-go, in particular Højlund, have just not looked ready for the Premier League in terms of the physicality, maybe in terms of the speed, in terms of dealing with that high-pressure situation of being at a football club like Man United. Now, I think there's a possibility, if both Højlund and Xerxes were to move on in the summer and one goes to Italy, one goes to Germany, I think we could see them both scoring goals. And I think Man United have seen two young raw players come in, not hit the ground running, and basically been swallowed up by the Premier League and the pressures of Man United. And I think with that, they then look to kind of adjust what they're doing and be like, we're Man United. We finished, was it 15th or 16th last season? We need players to come in, hit the ground running, who have done it before in the Premier League. And that's why I think all the players they've brought in so far and are interested in are proven in the Premier League.
There's no doubt there's been a shift in the approach. There's no doubt about that. But the question is this approach going to work? And I know we're not going to be able to judge it today or tomorrow. In fact, it's probably going to take us until the end of the season to get a real read for whether Man United have done the right thing or not. But when a club has got into the situation they have, where you're hearing so much about their financials, I think if I was a Manchester United fan, I would have been expecting the club to be a little bit more savvy in some of the negotiations. Now, I know ultimately you can't get a player for anything less than what the selling club are willing to accept, right? But I think there are alternatives. Like, I don't think Mbeumo and Cunha are such great players that there was no alternatives out there. Like, I think there are certain players that are really top tier, and you go, I really want him. He's the one. He's the fit. Doesn't matter what it costs me. I'm going to push the boat out.
Sure.
I'm going to go that extra mile, make it happen. Do either of those two players strike you as that? Because they don't for me.
We've got to take a break. I'd say Brian Mbeumo, yeah. I think Brian Mbeumo for 3-4 years consistently in the Premier League has been really, really good, getting better and better. I know he had 1 year left on his deal. I'd say Mbeumo, yeah, I think he's worth that, and I think he's going to be a major, major success at Manchester United. There really is plenty going on with Manchester United. talkSPORT understands they've opened talks with Benjamin Sesko after sending a delegation to Germany. Man United fans, who would you prefer, Sesko or Watkins? Give us a call on 03 717 223344 and be part of the Transfer Insiders. We're on talkSPORT and with Ladbrokes 18+, begamblerware.org. Good evening. It is the Transfer Insiders. We're on talkSPORT. It's Sam Ellard and Harry Symeou taking your Manchester United calls very, very shortly. Had a lot of texts coming in, been debating Sesko or Watkins to Manchester United. Rich, the Villa fan from York, says the arrogance of everyone associated with Man United in the media astounds me. Why would a player like Watkins leave a top six club for the car crash that is Manchester United? They've been on the slide for years. Watkins isn't going there. Now, to be fair, Rich, thanks for the text, but we didn't even say that Watkins would want to. We were simply talking from a Manchester United point of view, as the reports are today, talking to Sesko, also wanting Watkins. Who should they go for? I don't think any of us said that.
I think he would go, Watkins. Though. I think he would go. Like, and the reason I think he would go is not because Man United are in a better position than Aston Villa. Of course they're not. But don't you feel like Ollie Watkins' time at Villa just feels like it's coming towards a kind of natural end?
Why?
Because there was a period last season where John Duran was being picked ahead of him. And then even when John Duran moved on, Ollie Watkins still was not a guaranteed starter in some of Villa's biggest games. Now, I think that's crazy. I would have picked him. But clearly he's not as highly rated by Unai Emery as he is by some of the rest of us.
Well, Man United fans have called 03717223344. Villa fans, if you want to get involved, phone that number. We're taking your calls very shortly. First, though, Rangers are in Champions League second qualifying round action tonight away to Panathinaikos. 2-0 up from the first leg. It kicked off at 7 o'clock. And watching for talkSPORT is Paul Mitchell. Paul, good evening. How's it started?
Good evening. It's Panathinaikos 0, Rangers 0, but it started as the match started at Ibrox last week with the Greeks dominating. They really have pummeled Rangers. They've had 4 corners, they've had 5 chances. Rangers rarely had a chance to get up the park. One little chance for Nico Raskan, but they're really having to soak up the pressure. And I'll tell you who started well tonight. He played well last week as well as Jack Butland. He's been called upon 3 times to make saves already. Rangers leading 2-0 on aggregate, 0-0 on the night.
Paul, clearly, very, very early days at Rangers for Russell Martin, but what's the general feel like up at Ibrox? Happy with the appointment?
I think a lot of people are happy. He comes with good experience. Obviously, the Southampton thing went wrong at the end, but you know, he's played for the club, which fans like. They've got a feel for what it's like to be a Rangers player. He's got a very good presence about him. He deals with the media very well. So I think there's a lot of good things have happened. 1 or 2 questions on the signings. I think Rangers need to see a little bit more. They'd like another couple of signatures. And I think tonight will go a long way towards that if they can get through this with the prospect of more money coming via Champions League rather than a Europa League run. I think that would help Russell Martin and Rangers.
Paul, thank you. Back with you very shortly. Time now, though, to get an odds update with Ladbrokes.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. Supercharge your odds with our Odds Boost button. Selected markets applies to first £50 of stake. Terms apply. 18+. Gambleaware.org.
Good evening to Alex Apati this upcoming season.
Maybe want to turn off or down for a second if you're a Man United fan. I'd say start with the positives, but United are more likely to go down this season than win the league. They're 33-1 to win it, 20-1 to be relegated.
Wow.
Their fate probably lies somewhere in between those scenarios in truth. So top half finish, it would be progress, wouldn't it? They're 1-4 to finish in the top 10, 11-4 for a bottom half finish. And surely if that was the case, then it would mean curtains for Ruben Amorim. Top 6, you would say, is probably the target. No European football, no distractions is the old cliche. The positive for them is that they are in the top 6 of the top 6 betting, ahead of Aston Villa, who you mentioned just now, ahead of Tottenham and ahead of Brighton. On paper, again, it would be some leap from, I think, 15th or 16th last season. Top 4, surely too big of an ask. So on the spot right now, I would say they'll finish outside of the top 6, 7th or 8th. Haven't really been able to strengthen us they would have liked to up to this point. I just think another 12 months of grimness is on the cards for them.
Yeah, I never thought, Harry, that I'd be living in a time where somebody would come on and tell me that Manchester United are shorter to be relegated than to win the league.
I mean, I grew up in an era where Manchester United were completely dominant. Like, they ruined my childhood. Like,
they ruined all our childhoods.
You know, and here they are in this position. It's crazy. But, you know, they've got a lot of work to do. Ruben Amorim's got a lot of work to do. My worry is that, is he going to get the backing? I mean, he is getting the backing in terms of money being spent. But is it the right backing? You mentioned it earlier. If he wants Watkins and they bring somebody else in, it's kind of not a great place to start in your first kind of summer window, is it? No, for sure. And Alex, same question really regarding Arsenal. Harry's a big Arsenal fan. I'm guessing Arsenal are shorter to win the league than get relegated.
Yeah, and absolutely, Arteta is getting the back in too. They're 12-5 to win the title. So for context, they were slightly shorter this time last year, but that was when we thought it was a 2-horse race between City and Arsenal. This year, Liverpool are obviously in the mix too. They're favourites, in fact. What I would say is, all round, and you guys will probably agree, I think this is a better Arsenal team than last season. Much more depth. Finally got a striker that could be a decisive factor for them. One for the optimistic fans, Arsenal, it's not like supporters to get carried away, but they're 500-1 for the quadruple. What I would say to that is let's walk before you can run. They're 6-1 to win the FA Cup.
Don't say that to Harry. Harry's already had a couple of quid on that one. He's all over it.
He's at 500-1 is absolutely on.
Honestly, he absolutely loves that.
Well, right now it's still on, right?
Of course,
they're still on course for it. They're 12-1, 12-1 for the Premier League and the FA Cup. That is a double. I'm sure you would snap our hands off for if we were to offer that. I mentioned Gyökeres as well. He's been backed in already from 10-1 to 7-1 in the Golden Boot market. If he does hit the ground running, then there's every chance that 12-5 on them winning the league shortens in those opening few weeks.
If Erling Haaland picks up a season-long injury and so does Mo Salah, then maybe he's got a chance. But
any other ifs you want to throw in there?
I still can't see him getting near those guys. I think there's too much expectation around Gyökeres, to be honest. Like, I think he is going to come in and make a difference for Arsenal. There's no question about that. And he's a profile that Arsenal have been missing. But I think it's all about the kind of exchange rate, isn't it? He scored 39 goals in the Portuguese top flight. But what does that translate to in terms of the Premier League? If he scores 15 to 20 in his first Premier League season, and I'm talking about league goals, I'll be delighted with that.
I think that'd be a
20
huge goals
impact.
next season. That's a really good going.
Well, I don't think that's a given. I don't think that's a given, though. Do you? Do you guys think it's a given?
I think if he stays for the season, with how good you are, how many chances have been created for him, and how good he is as a striker, I think he'll score 20 league goals next season. He also looks like he's a player that's physically ready to come into the Premier League. Always sometimes when strikers come, you think the ability's there, but physically will they be able to adapt to the Premier League? He looks like someone that won't have any issue with the physicality of the Premier League.
Well, he knows English football. He hasn't played in the Premier League, but he knows English football.
And he'd have got kicked a few times in the Championship, wouldn't he?
He understands the fundamentals.
We'll do a lot more with Arsenal with you, Harry, before we go. But, Alex, got to ask you about the football season. I mean, it feels like it never really ended, right? It feels like we haven't had football at any point this summer. But the EFL season does get underway. The League One, League Two season gets underway this weekend. And Friday evening, Luton-Wimbledon, the first game of the League One season, live and exclusively on talkSPORT 2.
Yeah, we'll look at the outrights then for League One. As you know, you always look at the relegated sides, and obviously they're right up there in the betting. So Luton are favourites, 100 to 30 to win League One. As things stand, I think they still have 11 players who were on their books in the Premier League, so they're definitely stacked. It's hard to argue against them being favourites. 100 to 30 could be good value if things go as they should, but they were dreadful last season. So at the same time, it's difficult to sit here and make too much of a case for them breezing League One. Elsewhere, Huddersfield, 6-1 credit to them. They're ahead of Plymouth and Cardiff, who came down with Luton from the Championship. They finished 10th last season, but they have been busy in the transfer window themselves, Huddersfield. Cardiff are 15-2. It's their first venture in the third tier since 2003. They'll be hoping for an immediate return. I don't think they care whether they win it, finish runners-up or through the playoffs. For me, though, I'm going to be boring and say Luton win it, and I think they win. I think they win comfortably against Wimbledon on Friday night as well. Really assert their authority on this division.
Good stuff. Alex, thank you so much. Have a good evening. That was a look at the latest odds with Ladbrokes 18+. BeGamblerWare.org.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. Supercharge your odds with our Odds Boost button. Selected markets applies to first £50 of stake. Terms apply. 18+. GamblerWare.org.
Joshua, the Man United fans, called 03717 223344. Joshua, Watkins or Seshko, who do you want?
I just want to say about how underrated Watkins is, I think. If you look at his last few seasons with Aston Villa, he's been amazing for them. He scored the goal in the Euros with England as well. He's got Champions League experience. I think there's a lot of Man United fans who are looking at Sesko and Watkins and going straight for Sesko without, you know, with underrating completely Watkins. Like, I just don't understand the kind of like thinking of a lot of United fans at the moment. When you look at Højlund and when you look at a lot of previous strikers, I think a lot of fans have gone, yeah, let's go sign them, without looking at the stats, looking at the experience that other players have had. And, you know, how are we not going for Ollie Watkins before Sesko with all that experience? It's mad to me.
I completely agree with you. I think Ollie Watkins is a much better player than people care to give him credit for. But I did want to ask you this. In terms of Man United's priorities, is the centre forward the main priority right now? Because it feels like to me, and this might just be, you know, me sort of going by what he did in Serie A previously, but it feels to me if Joshua Zirkzee can sort of build up his game a little bit and play that kind of facilitator role at centre forward with Mbeumo and Cunha coming in and getting close to him, that feels like it could work for me. And I feel like Man United have got more pressing needs in that team. Do you think the striker is the number one priority right now?
Well, not only striker, I think Zirkzee is an amazing player, another underrated one. He's almost got that like touch and like finesse of Berbatov, you know, when he works. But when you look at the midfield, like of Man United,
yeah, that's the big area for me.
Is that the problem? Because when you've got Højlund, who's not been scoring, so many strikers come through with Man United, and they're not getting the service, and they're the ones that are getting the blame. I really feel sorry for Højlund because I think he's a great prospect. He's coming to a team at a really young age, and they're relying on him to change everything. And he's not getting the service from midfield. Bruno Fernandes is probably probably our best player, but he's also our biggest problem at the same time. You know what I mean? It's like, do we go get a striker who's going to ultimately fail because of this midfield, or do we look for a midfielder again and push Bruno out? But I don't think the club will ever push Bruno out. So it's a really weird situation, you know.
Yeah, Joshua, thank you very much for the call. Good stuff. 03717223344. Here's the number to call if you want to come on and have your say. In terms of priorities for Man United, I'd leave it with this. They maybe should have started this summer in goal. You know, I'm not sure Man United doing anything moving forward. Forget about who's on the right, who's up front with Andre Onana in goal. I think he makes way too many mistakes. We'll carry on that conversation a little bit later on. On talkSPORT, it's the transfer insiders, Sam Ellard, Harry Symeou. With you this evening until 10 o'clock. Ben Jacobs, talkSPORT reporter, joins us next to round up the biggest transfer stories of the day.
Wondered why Erling Haaland scores a hat-trick instead of just 3 goals? Why Darwin Núñez is said to have missed a sitter rather than just missing an easy shot? Or why on earth defenders are said to park the bus? Let's break down some of our favourite football cliches. First, let's talk hat-tricks. The term comes from cricket.
$10K for Coldplay.
Our competition to win 10 grand and a huge VIP night out at Wembley for Coldplay ends on Monday. We're giving you the chance to win 6 tickets in a private box for you and your mates on August 22nd with full hospitality. Plus, we're chucking in that 10 grand, spending money completely tax-free. Here's how to enter. 18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland for a chance to win. Text the word WIN to 83338 by the 4th of August at 11 o'clock and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Coldplay competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 7th of August. This is a TalkSPORT limited promotion run on TalkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. Actually, I'm sounding a bit croaky, aren't I, this evening? I've been on a...
You're soldiering it.
I say, listen, this is the best job in the world, isn't it? I've been on a stag do for the last couple of nights. Got back yesterday evening, went to Prague, got to the airport.
I had my stag do in Prague.
How was it?
Fantastic.
Was your flight cancelled on the way there?
No, it wasn't. No,
we got to the airport Sunday afternoon, literally queuing, waiting to get on the flight. Flight cancelled.
Oh, man.
Absolute nightmare. And it's for me, I'm panic stations. All the lads, cool, calm, composed. Booked another flight to Berlin, had a night out in Berlin, woke up in the morning, drove to Prague, night out in Prague, came back yesterday. Absolute belter.
Fantastic.
Absolute belter.
But you're paying for it a bit now.
Well, no, I'm sounding a little bit croaky on her, but you're going to do all the hard work this evening. And so is Ben Jacobs, because joining us on the Transfer Insiders is TalkSPORT reporter, the man in the know, Ben Jacobs. Ben, good evening. How are you?
The big preview on TalkSPORT with Ladbrokes. Supercharge your odds with our odds boost button. Selected markets applies to first £50 of stake. Terms apply. 18 plus. Gambleaware.org.
Good evening, Ben Jacobs. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
We're good, thank you. Very, very good. Let's start then with the big transfer story of the day. Manchester United and Benjamin Sesko.
Yeah, broken exclusively by myself and chief football correspondent Alex Crook. Manchester United sent a delegation to Germany to start formal talks with Leipzig. Discussions have taken place with intermediaries as well. And this comes after Manchester United moved a list of 3, Ollie Watkins, Nicholas Jackson, Benjamin Sesko, to 2. They went to Aston Villa. Villa said not for sale. Manchester United felt like that was not a definitive not for sale, but 60 million and Villa needing a replacement. And therefore, they've pivoted to Benjamin Sesko, who was also always on the list. And this is move being driven by Christopher Vidal, the number 2 to sporting director Jason Wilcox. And the talks at the moment are both on the club and the player side. And there's even a possibility that Manchester United try and chuck in a player as well. Rasmus Højlund is the name that's been mentioned, although it may be difficult because Leipzig don't have any kind of European football. In terms of the player side, it's important to note that Newcastle is still there, and they are waiting to see whether Sesko perhaps picks them because of Champions League football. And if he says yes to Newcastle, then I actually think the club-to-club negotiations between Leipzig and Newcastle will be quite smooth, because Newcastle are prepared to pay pretty much the asking price of in excess of £65 million. Manchester United may wait for the player buy-in. If that comes in the coming days, their offer is likely to be closer to 55 or 60 million, and then it will all depend on whether Leipzig drop the price or stick to this number of basically 80 million euros. So it's a fascinating saga. I know Newcastle fans will kind of be listening and thinking this is what happened with several other targets. We got in there first, player went to another club. It's not necessarily as clear-cut in the case of Benjamin Sesko, but Manchester United are confident of agreeing terms on the player side. Club-to-club negotiations with Leipzig, though, may be a bit more complicated.
Ben, I know from my club, Arsenal, they were in the mix for Benjamin Sesko. I know that they had difficulty agreeing a price with RB Leipzig. Is there any sense that RB Leipzig are willing to just lower their demands a little bit, having seen that deal essentially collapse in the end? Because, you know, it feels like you're talking about sort of £65 million, and it feels like that's a fair price for Benjamin Sesko. But previously, I don't think that was a price that they were willing to deal at. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, and you make a great point that Arsenal have been there. Andrea Berta simultaneously negotiated Victor Gyökeres and Benjamin Sesko. And the feeling within Arsenal was both those deals might be possible for 70 million euros. In the end, Gyökeres was, and Sesko wasn't. And that's because Benjamin Sesko has a variable release clause, which is now in excess of 80 million euros. The only thing in the favour of suitors is Leipzig have no European football. they want to bring in some money. But for example, if Xavi Simons got done first to Chelsea, Šeško's price might remain high, and vice versa. If a deal is agreed quickly for Šeško, it might suddenly become a little bit harder for Chelsea to try and get Xavi Simons over the line. So one big sale by Leipzig is needed, and it's a bit of a rush and a race in the same way, I suppose, that Manchester United saw urgency in getting Bryan Mbeumo over the line, paying a bit more than they wanted to, because had they waited, Newcastle might already have Yohan Wissa, and Mbeumo would have been a whole lot harder to get completed. So it is quite a complicated situation, but both Manchester United and Newcastle are now waiting to see which is Šeško's preference, because he is open to both. And each project is different. Manchester United has the prestige, the higher wage, but they don't have any European football. Newcastle United is an ambitious project. They want a number one. I think the feeling will be if Šeško goes to Newcastle that Isak will end up leaving for Liverpool. So Šeško will know definitively at Newcastle he's likely to be a starter, whereas at Manchester United, there's the Rasmus Højlund situation, there's Joshua Zirkzee, there's the fact that Matheus Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo can both play as a 9 as well. So it's a fascinating scenario, but the feeling remains from Newcastle and from Manchester United that as this window ticks away, that price for Šeško may drop.
What is the latest, Ben, with Eberechi Eze? We know that he's got a release clause in his contract to Crystal Palace. We know that Arsenal like him, but some reports today that perhaps Arsenal just not willing to activate that release clause. Is that true?
Well, I think the position of Arsenal has always been that they may match the release clause or somewhere close, but they never really wanted to trigger it. And that's because the release clause itself is very complicated, as it was for Michael Olise. So it's not just about saying we won't meet the 67.5 million valuation, which is 60 million fee and the rest in add-ons. It's the mechanism for how you trigger it and the payment terms affiliated to it. And also, like with Olise, the former clubs get a percentage. There's almost a commission paid to the player. So it's kind of in his interest to have it triggered as well. And then obviously the terms are very favourable to Crystal Palace too. So this is a walk through the front door, speak to Crystal Palace, don't get into any possibility of a Morgan Gibbs-White situation. And all suitors, including Arsenal, know this. So Eze wants Arsenal, and now Arsenal have started talks, as we revealed on talkSPORT last week, with Crystal Palace, but their feeling is they want a bit outside of the release clause. And then as a very well-respected insider account broke, and then Ed Aarons in The Guardian also ran as well, so hand of Arsenal first, and then Ed Aarons, about 35 million needs to be paid up front in this release clause as far as the payment terms are concerned. And as a consequence, Palace are saying the same, that if you want to do something outside of the release clause, 35 million needs to be a lump sum payment in whatever the final package is. So these talks are ongoing now. My expectation is that Arsenal bid for Eberechi Eze. It'll be interesting to see whether Spurs turn any appreciation into something more formal. Now they haven't got Morgan Gibbs-White, but the feeling amongst sources is that if we get that North London derby or battle, that the player wants Arsenal, and now we have to wait and see what kind of valuation the bid comes in at. And I think from Arsenal's point of view, they'll want to place that formal offer sooner rather than later to avoid either any surprises or new suitors coming to the race, because Bayern Munich, for example, in the last few days also made a call to the Eze camp.
Well, if it's a choice out of the two North London clubs, it's pretty easy. Well, you would be biased, pretty easy. I would be biased, but it is an easy decision to make. Ben, there's been a lot of talk about Arsenal maybe now focusing on potential outgoings, and maybe that's causing the delay with regards to them kind of really formalising their approach for Eberechi Eze. Is it a case of Arsenal needing to go? Because you look at the list of players that Arsenal could potentially move on this summer, and it doesn't feel like you're going to get huge amounts of money for any of them.
Only just into a new financial year, and therefore, in theory, they've got quite a lot of time if they're just looking to balance the books. We don't know also what the long-term future of PSR will look like, but this is more about squad chemistry and wages, because with PSR, you're thinking, how can I get an injection on the books to essentially navigate the PSR guidelines, whereas with wages, they linger for longer. Yeah. So ultimately, we've got two extremes with Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard, where there's been outreach for both to extend them, But at the right kind of offer, Arsenal might consider an exit. And this is why there's no clarity over whether Trossard will extend or go. But I don't think they'll just let it run as is. So if he's there at the end of the window, they'll likely extend Trossard. The same for Martinelli. But one of them could end up departing, and that takes the wage off the books. And those wages are over multiple years, not just one financial year, which is why it's different from any imminent PSR concerns. And then you can use that to invest. And anybody coming in of Eze's magnitude would be on a long-term contract with long-term commitment to wages as well. So they're two different considerations, but both financial hurdles to navigate. PSR is a green tick for Arsenal now, but that long-term wage planning will require an exit, as will the squad chemistry too, because remember, you've got Ethan Nwaneri, who might be given opportunities centrally. You've got Noni Madueke, who can play on the right or the left. So if you add Eberechi Eze, who can play through the centre or on the left, and you've still got Martinelli and Trossard, it's probably one too many. However, I don't think it's a case of don't go for Eze until there's an outgoing. They very well might try for Eze first, but come the end of the window, it still wouldn't surprise me if one of Martinelli or Trossard still goes.
Ben, thank you very much. Ben Jacobs and Alex Crew will keep you across everything you need to know within regards to transfers. I'd say, Harry, that I appreciate there's complications there, as Ben brilliantly explained, in terms of structuring that fee. I think he would be an unbelievable signing for Arsenal. I think on that left-hand side, clearly a massive upgrade, in my opinion, on Martinelli, on Trossard. Also versatile, can play behind the centre forward if needed. If Odegaard gets an injury, I think from an Arsenal point of view, go and get that done. Again, someone that's done it in the Premier League at a good age, experienced, silky player. I think he'd be a top signing for Arsenal.
He would finish off the window brilliantly for Arsenal. They've done some really good business so far. This would be the icing and the cherry on top of the cake. Is that how it works?
I think I get what we were trying to say there, so we'll leave with that. That's all thanks to Ladbrokes, 18+, begambleaware.org.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. Supercharge your odds with our odds boost button. Selected markets applies to first £50 of stake. Terms apply. 18+, gambleaware.org.
Transfer Insider with you until 10 o'clock. Up next, we're exclusively from Manchester United defender Diogo Dalot. A very good evening. It is the Transfer Insiders. We're on talkSPORT. It's Sam Ellard and Harry Symeou with you until 10 o'clock this evening, rounding up all of the day's biggest transfer news, rumours and some done deals. Rangers, though, this evening in Champions League qualification action, taking on Panathinaikos, leading 2-0 from the first leg. It's half-time. Paul Mitchell, how are Rangers getting on?
Our Rangers are doing okay. Panathinaikos 0, Rangers 0. We've played 2.5 minutes. We played over the 45 minutes, but a free kick has been conceded, so we're going to get that taken before the referee goes to send everybody into the interval. How Rangers are still level? Well, thanks to the goalkeeper. Jack Butland's made a couple of terrific saves. He had an injury scare in the first half as well, but after 31 minutes he could do little when Juric robbed Tavernier at the edge of the box. He squared the ball onto the penalty spot, and Pelistri, coming in, opened his foot from 12 yards out and just scooped the ball horribly wide. It was a golden opportunity for Panathinaikos. Rangers are a couple of half chances. Raskan has come close, Curtis has come close as well, but Rangers just at the moment looking to drive the ball away. But it will be half time, it will be 0-0. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of tired Rangers players out there who'd be absolutely thrilled to be going into the break 0-0. Remember, they lead our aggregate thanks to those 2 goals at Ibrox last week.
There we go, 45 minutes away until they're through to the next round. Regular updates throughout the evening on the Rangers game in Panathinaikos. Now, don't miss the latest episode of Inside Devils this Friday on talkSPORT's YouTube channel. This week, defender Diogo Dalot exclusively joined Flex and outlined how fans will see immediate improvement on the pitch this season.
For you to arrive, you're going to have quality. I think that's undeniable, because otherwise you wouldn't sign for a club like this. But then there's... When we talk about this type of pressure that is especially from the outside, from the fans, it's specific because they just want you to see giving everything for the club. Then you might have good games or bad games. You might have less or better quality than some players, but that standard, that thing that you need to show when you're on the pitch, I think that's the most important thing as a club, especially for the fans. I think that's the first big thing that they want to see in the football
commitment, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If you're not committed to what you are doing, to the games you're playing, to the club, I think it will be very difficult for you to succeed at this club.
That's what Flex is all about, you see. The host of Inside Devils going abroad, getting exclusive interviews for his own YouTube show. I mean, Harry is the kind of stand-in host of Inside Arsenal. Were you not out and about this summer getting exclusives like
mate,
Flex was?
I'm not on Flex's level. Flex is top. The commitment that guy puts in, it's just incredible. You know, he's brilliant at what he does, and he's a great guy as well, which is always nice.
We love Flex, don't we? You can catch the full interview this Friday on talkSPORT's YouTube channel, and don't miss Inside Devils each week for all the latest news coming out of Old Trafford. At 7:52, it's now time for this. I'm back in Prague. Now it's time for our feature Rumour Has It, where me and Harry will be read out some transfer rumours, and we have to decide whether we think it's a good move for the player and the club. Joining us now in the studio is assistant producer Luke Henry. Luke, good evening. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
He's still a bit. He's still a bit shaky.
We were speaking in the off-break. Prague is a great place to have a stag. We've all had a stag do in Prague.
We've all had a stag. Did you sound as croaky as I did, or you?
Well, actually, it was just the day. It was actually, I got back on the Monday, and then we played PSG in the first leg of the semi-final. At the Emirates. Yeah.
You all right?
By Wednesday,
tough week.
I was tough. Yeah, Wednesday was a struggle.
That's the long, hard struggling
It was emotional.
Well, you can now take over.
Yes, rumour has it. Let's start with an interesting rumour today. Crystal Palace's Jean-Philippe Mateta.
I've just seen this, yeah.
Atalanta.
Okay.
Bid rejected 30 million. Champions League, is that an enticing move, or would he want to stay at Palace? Or
if I was Jean-Philippe Mateta and Atalanta came in for me under Gasperini, I would probably go. I would probably make that move, because you always knew that under Gasperini, Atalanta would be at a certain level. Gasperini's gone now, and I think Atalanta could drop like a stone. They've got Ivan Juric in as the new manager. Didn't exactly cover himself in glory as the Southampton boss, but to be fair,
it felt like anyone walking in there wasn't going to get anything out of this place.
Absolutely. And actually, it was interesting because I remember being at a Southampton game towards the end of the season, and Juric basically kind of said like he might not be there next season, and it was the world's worst kept secret. We all knew he was going. But then that kind of prompted me to look at his career to date. And he's actually had a very good managerial career. And he's done very well in Italy. So, maybe I'm being a bit harsh on Atalanta, but if I was Jean-Philippe Mateta, I don't think I'd make this move now. If this was 12 months ago, 6 months ago, I might have considered it. But I don't think it's a good move for him today.
I'll also say that Crystal Palace at the moment is home for him. They're the football club that bought the absolute best of him. We know they're going to be in Europe next season. Obviously, unfortunately for them, not in the European competition they wanted to be in, but he's in the best form of his career. He's playing in the best league in the world under a great manager. I think he should stay there for another season. And I'd also say as well that if he can replicate his form season just gone next season and can hit the same numbers and be as consistent, then you'd even argue that come this time next summer, possibly, there could even be a better team that's in for Jean-Philippe Mateta. So I think from his point of view, stay at Crystal Palace for another season, enjoy that European journey with the fans that love you. And I think from Palace's point of view, it's just an absolute no-go. Yeah. They can't sell him. £30 million the bid?
Yes, that was
I'd say I'd imagine that will be rejected as soon as that email gets opened.
How many players can they lose? They're going to lose Mark Gay, probably. They might lose Eberechi Eze, as we were just discussing. And it's like all the work that has been done by Oliver Glasner and his team. It's going to keep being undone, and that's a real shame.
Especially off the back of an FA Cup.
The next question could also be, what next for Oliver Glasner? He's such a good coach.
And Adam Wharton.
There we go. Any other players you want to link
We'll
with
have him as well. We'll have Adam Wharton. Luke, won't we? We'll take him as well.
Well, we'll have him.
Adam Wharton.
We'll have him. Mendy.
Yeah, we'll look after him.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
We can never have too many good players.
Mendy and Norgard.
So, for move on.
Next one.
Manchester United were also linked to Jean-Philippe Mateta.
Yeah,
let's look about their goalkeeper situation.
Fascinating, this one.
Stefan Ortega has been linked with a move to Old Trafford. Yes, a little report's coming out saying Stefan Ortega may be open to the move. Is that a good move? Is he better than Onana? Or is he just a really good number 2? Or could he be a very good number 1?
I'd say every time I've seen him step in for Man City ahead of Ederson, he's always done a really, really good job. So no, I don't think he's just a number 2. I think he's definitely good enough to be a number 1. I think Onana's he's had 2 seasons at Manchester United. We're 2 seasons in, and it just feels like he's making the same mistakes. Way too inconsistent, a little bit nervy with the ball at his feet, and he just lets in too many goals that should be saved. So I absolutely think, we're talking at the top of the show about Sesko coming in, and they need number 9, but I said that before they do anything this summer, the position they maybe could have strengthened is in goal. I think Ortega will be a good signing. I maybe would say there probably has to be a goalkeeper out there there's proven himself as number 1 more than Ortega. I read today link with Donnarumma, Manchester United.
Yeah, we did that yesterday.
And even
Monday,
Nick Pope as well.
Yeah, Nick Pope is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Can't see that happening.
I feel like the Donnarumma stuff is him trying to negotiate a better contract. There's not a great deal of time left on his PSG contract, and we know that he wants more money. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of those that's been briefed to kind of generate a bit of interest. But on Stefan Ortega, if I'm United, I'd absolutely take him. He's a big upgrade for me on Andre Onana. I admit I'm not Andre Onana's biggest fan. I don't like goalkeepers that are unsafe, if that makes sense. Goalkeepers that have you on edge all the time.
No ideal, is it?
And he's certainly one of those, yeah.
Crazy, isn't it?
So I think we're both saying that's a no-go, isn't it?
It's a no-go. It's fascinating though about Manchester United, isn't it? Because you talk about striker being the priority, the keeper being a priority. I think their centre midfield is a priority.
Yeah.
But
well,
you can talk about Man United all day, couldn't you?
There we go. I mean, probably will do, won't we, today and tomorrow, the next day. Luke, thank you very, very much. Rumour has it back at the same time tomorrow. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, 18+. Be gambler aware, dog. It is the Transfer Insiders, and we did a whole hour, and we haven't mentioned Alexander Isak and Newcastle. We better do that next.
Corinthian Casuals are a team in the Combined Counties League Premier Division South. Despite that, they're one of the most important clubs in world football. Here's why. The club was formed in 1939 as the result of a merger between Corinthians FC and Casuals FC. Now, Corinthians FC were founded in the late 1800s when the FA's top brass were sick of getting pumped by Scotland every time they played them. As a result, a man called Nicholas Lane Jackson set up an amateur side which would bring in the best players who could all play for the national side. And it worked. It wasn't long before England were dominating the international fixtures they played, and it was largely down to Corinthians. In fact, in 1894 and 1895, they played consecutive games where Corinthians provided the entire England 11. But the thing is, the players refused to play professional football. They didn't believe in it. They wanted to spread the values of sportsmanship, competition, and played for the love of the game. It also helped that most of the players were Oxbridge graduates who didn't need the money. But instead of entering the league and cup competitions, they played exhibition football and toured the world, bringing the beautiful game with them. And it was this which spread the game throughout the world and made it so popular. Most famously, in 1910, they travelled to Brazil. And the locals in Sao Paulo were so impressed, they started their own team under the same name. Yes, the same Corinthians who won the FIFA Club World Cup in 2021, one of the biggest football teams in Brazil. Now, they were global superstars, and despite not being professional, Corinthians drew in the crowds. Everybody wanted to play them, everybody wanted to watch them. So much so, they regularly played the winners of the FA Cup in what eventually became the Community Shield, winning most of the time. They actually inflicted Manchester United's worst defeat, 11-3, a record which still stands to this day. Now, fast forward to today, Corinthian Casuals still don't pay their staff or players. The ethos of sportsmanship is still at the heart of everything that they do. And even though they're a side in the lower leagues,
Very, very good evening. It's just gone 8 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 30th of July. It's the Transfer Insiders. We're on talkSPORT. Sam Ellard, Harry Symeou with you until 10 o'clock, bringing you all of the day's biggest transfer stories, done deals and rumours. And really the two biggest news of the day that talkSPORT understands. Manchester United have opened talks for Benjamin Sesko after sending a delegation to Germany to meet with Leipzig officials. He's one of two active options for Manchester United, along with Aston Villa striker Ollie Watkins. Elsewhere today, Liverpool's financial position has been strengthened prior to a potential bid for Alexander Isak after Luis Diaz completed his €70 million move to Bayern Munich. What now for Liverpool and what now for Alexander Isak? We're now going to talk all things Newcastle, and there is, as we know, plenty going on in terms of where they're at. Again, Luis Diaz has left the football club and we're expecting a formal bid to come in from Liverpool to Newcastle for Alexander Isak. Earlier today, the Daily Mail's chief football reporter Craig Hope joined Daddy Oladipo and Simon Jordan to give his thoughts on the Isak situation.
I don't begrudge Alexander Isak for wanting to move. He's given Newcastle 3 tremendous years of his career. He's helped end the 70-year trophy drought. He's 26 later this year. He doesn't want to play in the Champions League. He wants to win the Champions League. He's also being paid a wage, which is probably half his value on the open market. Alexander Isak wanting to go isn't the issue here. It's the way he's potentially going about it and going to go about it. So if this didn't happen, and there's a lot of reasons why it couldn't happen, how he's then reintegrated to the fold with his teammates and, by extension, supporters, that might be a little more difficult than it perhaps could and should have been.
So I have to say, I disagree with that last bit a lot. Like, you know, Alexander Isak clearly wants to go to Liverpool. Sure, maybe he's doing things right now that he probably shouldn't do. But if we end this window with Alexander Isak as a Newcastle player and is reintegrated into the first team, as soon as he scores that first goal for Newcastle, everything's forgotten about. He'll do the trademark celebration, he'll win them a game of football, and nobody in Newcastle is going to be leaving a stadium going, oh, goodness me, I can't believe he wanted to go. It'll all be forgotten about. He's not the first player to want to move elsewhere, and he won't be the first player not to get that move. So I think that integration bit, there'll be no issue there whatsoever if he remains a Newcastle player.
I think footballers that will be working with him. All right, they might not like that he's not,
but they'll understand
involved, but they'll understand it exactly. And they're all friends as well. You know, like in a lot of cases, there are friendships there as well. And I don't think that people are going to sort of be pushing back against Alexander Isak being reintegrated, or there's going to be any kind of atmosphere. I get why the fans are unhappy about it. I understand it, but at the same time, we've seen many footballers over the years do this to get their move. And if you feel like your career is short, which
I'm not saying it's right, by the way.
No, it's absolutely
not
no
right.
issue
integrating him.
It's not right, but it's the reality of the world that we live in.
It's football, right?
It's football,
when a team above you and is better than you come calling, 99.9% of players will want that move. You mentioned they're unhappy Newcastle fans. I wonder if our next guest, top reporter for our great website, talksport.com, and big Newcastle fan, Jack Cunningham, is an unhappy Newcastle fan. Good evening, Jack. How are you?
Evening, Sam. How you doing, mate? Good.
We're really good, thank you. Are you an unhappy Newcastle fan? How do you feel about
I'm
this
extremely unhappy Newcastle fan.
Talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an extremely unhappy Newcastle fan. Not only about the Isak situation, the whole transfer window. I mean, if we look back to the end of the season, I remember sat on the goal show with you saying that if Newcastle have a good summer, I see no reason why we couldn't challenge for the Premier League, because the club and the squad was in the position whereby, with a couple of key additions, I certainly believe that was possible. Now, the way I'm looking at it at this moment in time, after a absolutely shambolic summer, I'm looking at it thinking the highest Newcastle could finish is probably 5th next year. I'm looking at Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester City and Liverpool absolutely running away at the top of the league. I think Newcastle, in terms of the way they've gone about it, I think some players they've been a bit unlucky with who've ended up going elsewhere. I think other deals have just been way too slow and allowed other teams to come in. The James Trafford deal springs to mind, in the fact that Newcastle chased him for a year. You know, last year the deal got cancelled by Paul Mitchell. He said, no, we're not going to do it, when I think it was about £16 million. He then had an incredible season for Burnley, 26 clean sheets. Of course, the price has still gone up by about 10 million. In the end, Manchester City are paying £27 million for him. Newcastle had about a month before City even registered their interest to, you know, come in, get the deal done. He'd even told people that he was going to Newcastle. So the fact that then Manchester City have a terrible Club World Cup, Edison drops, you know, some pretty terrible performances. Man City come in, they get Trafford, and Newcastle are now sat with getting Aaron Ramsdale. And I'm not going to sit here and slag off Ramsdale. I don't rate him
no
massively.
Ramsdale slander. No Ramsdale slander.
No, I don't rate him massively, Harry. I've got to be fair. But what I will say is, as soon as he puts that shirt on, I will 100% support him. I was wrong about Anthony Gordon when Newcastle signed Gordon. I was certainly not convinced about that signing whatsoever. You know, being proven totally wrong there. So with the club, what I will say is that most of the signings we make always end up being good. There's not been many since the takeover that haven't gone well. It's just the issue this summer has been getting them through the door.
You are unhappy, aren't you, Jack? Goodness me, you've gone straight in there off your long hop and given it to us. If I can just go back to Isak there, and Craig Cote was speaking about, you know, he's not angry at Isak wanting to move to Liverpool. He's more angry at how he's kind of going about it. Are you unhappy with how he's going about it? Do you feel let down as a Newcastle fan, or do you just think that when one of, you know, the team that just won the Premier League come calling, it's understandable that he'd want that move? How do you feel about that?
I mean, okay, it's understandable you want the move, but ultimately I was adamant that Isak wouldn't leave this summer, and that was based on a couple of things. One was the fact that Newcastle got Champions League football. I felt that on the pitch, in the time that he's been there, I don't know what more Newcastle could have done to prove to him that this is a club that is going in the right direction and is in the place to win things. If you think about, it's 2 seasons in the Champions League since he's been there, and also won a trophy finally. So on the pitch, totally see no issues there. So I based it on that. I also based it on the fact that if Newcastle are going to be the #1 club in the world, which they keep telling us that that's what they want to be, then you can't sell your best player to a potential rival, a Premier League rival. If you want to challenge for the Premier League, you can't then sell Alexander Isak to Liverpool, because then you can forget about challenging Liverpool for 4 or 5 years. You're not going to get anywhere near them for that period of time. Isak is that good. He's that important. And then the other reason I didn't think would sell him is I didn't think this would happen. I didn't think he would necessarily, refuse to go on pre-season tour. Okay, look, we don't officially know that is the reason, but the thigh injury that he has, the scan came back clear. I've been saying this as well. Look, it's a pre-season tour, it's commercial. If the injury is a little niggle, he gets on the plane and he goes along, he does all the PR stuff. He's Newcastle's best player. These fans who are watching Newcastle in Asia want to see Alexander Isak. There's no reason if this injury is as small as it is supposed to be, that he'd be staying at home. So, all of that is really disappointing. Moving to Liverpool, look, I get it. The football career is short. A team like Liverpool come in, you're going to be interested. But he could do it in a different way, and I'm really disappointed in the way it has gone about.
This is the thing, though, Jack. Like, how else can he push this through? Do you know what this reminds me a little bit of? It reminds me of when Robin van Persie wanted to leave Arsenal. You've said it there that you think that... No, the reason I say that is because you said it there that Newcastle have done as much on the pitch as you could realistically expect in terms of winning a cup, qualifying for the Champions League. But if you can see that the stuff behind the scenes is not working in the way it should be, you've mentioned it before to me, Jack, when we spoke on talkSPORT 2 about them telling him he was going to get a new contract and then not following through with that. You've seen them go in for players in this transfer window and get it horribly wrong and lose out on players time and time again. It might not have anything to do with what's going on the pitch, and it's probably more of, I'm behind the scenes, I can see this ain't working, and this project is stuck.
Jack, if I can just jump in there before you answer that.
Yeah.
You ask the question, Harry, and say, well, what can he do to push through a move? He can do nothing. Everybody knows the situation, right? Liverpool are interested in Alexander Isak.
Yep.
Alexander Isak clearly wants to move to Liverpool, right?
Yep.
And Newcastle are saying at the moment he's not for sale. Alexander Isak can't do anything.
Of course he can.
What can he do?
Him doing this puts Newcastle in a terrible position. Because you can sit there and talk about how long he's got left on his contract and that they hold all the cards.
Right. They do.
And they hold all the cards.
He's got 3 years left on his deal.
But if you keep hold of Alexander Isak, you force him to stay and he never gets his head right again. And he comes out on the pitch and he fails to perform. Hold on a second.
Harry.
His value tanks, mate. It tanks.
If Alexander Isak remains a Newcastle player next season, he's going to score 25 to 30 goals. Well, you think Alexander Isak at this stage of his career is going to refuse to play, sit on the bench, down tools?
No, but we've seen players unhappy. The
only thing here that Alexander Isak can do is sit and wait for Liverpool to give Newcastle what they want. All this not going on pre-season tour is going to change absolutely nothing.
He can help bridge the gap.
Alexander Isak has 3 years left on his contract. The only thing that can happen is for Liverpool to agree a fee with Newcastle. All this not training, all this talk, all this not going on pre-season tour, it's all absolutely irrelevant.
But if there's a gap, let's say Liverpool, I'm using these numbers for an argument's sake, right? Let's say Liverpool put £120 million on the table.
Okay.
And Newcastle say, I want £130 million.
Okay.
A player being really pushy and really forceful and refusing to take part in anything and giving the selling club the impression that he will not be committed to their cause if he remains can lead to a club lowering their asking price. We've seen it we've just seen it with Victor Gyökeres. We've just literally seen the same thing happen with Victor Gyökeres. I'm not coming back to training. I'm not reporting back to pre-season. I want to go. Then he's telling his agent, let's waive.
It looks like something you got Lister as well. At Brentford.
Exactly.
He wants to join Newcastle.
Exactly.
He's refusing to play for Brentford.
As much as we want to pretend that the clubs still have all the power, they don't anymore. We've been talking about player power rising for years, and we're at the stage now where the players call the shots. And ultimately, if Alexander Isak really wants to force this, I'm almost certain that a deal will be agreed. And it might not be at the price that Newcastle see as being ideal. It might be less.
I mean, yeah. I think it's interesting. You make some really interesting points there, to be fair, Harry. I think what I will say with Isak at the moment in time, Newcastle do not have another striker. I mean, Will Asula at the moment is going to be starting against Aston Villa. And I like Asula. He's got talent. He's raw. But he should not be starting in the Premier League against Aston Villa. He should certainly not be starting in the Champions League as well. So Newcastle are in a position now where they need a top replacement. They need 2 players, really, because Callum Wilson's gone as well. So you talked, obviously, I heard Ben Jacobs before talking about Šeško. Look, I think he's going to Man United. I think that Newcastle have clearly, put that idea, they put the project to him, and again, he's been drawn in by what Manchester United are as a club. So whatever, he's gone. So I think then that means that Newcastle are in a position where there's no top striker out there anymore. And I think that what they should do is then refuse to sell Isak, no matter what Liverpool offer. Because Liverpool still haven't made a bid yet. They've had this weird nonsense where they say, Liverpool are going to wait and see if Newcastle say, he's for sale, then we'll put a bid in. If you want him, put a bid in.
Exactly that.
But so they haven't done that.
But Harry seems to think that Alexander Isak not going on pre-season tour, Newcastle are going to go, hang on a minute, what's that, Alex? Oh, no worries, we'll call Liverpool and arrange it.
Hold on.
It's nonsense. He's got 3 years left on his deal, Harry.
Hold on a minute.
And in a World Cup year next season, you think he's could he just not want to perform for Newcastle?
Am I seriously having a conversation with 2 gentlemen right now that don't think Liverpool are going to make a bid?
No, I do.
Well, I think
it's
they will,
coming.
but
It's coming.
But
I think they will.
But the thing is, what the entire attitude has been, and what talkSPORT understands as well, is that Liverpool's our whole idea is they're only going to make a bid when they have got some sort of indication from Newcastle that they're willing to accept a bid, right? So which is really, really weird. Like, if you want the player, just put the bid in. I don't know why you're waiting around, messing around. If you want the player, put a bid in, then you can start negotiating. I think they're obviously maybe waiting to see if Newcastle get replacement. As I say, at the moment, if Newcastle don't get Chesko, because he's the only real one I can say on the market as the top potential striker anyway, then I just think Newcastle have to put their foot down, do not sell Isak for anything, and look, next summer he can go to a European club or something. Because ultimately, if Newcastle want to continue to build and continue to be a team challenge at the top of the Premier League, they have to at some point say, right, if we can't get a replacement in, Isak is not going anywhere, and you're going to get reintegrated into the team. The fans probably won't have the same love and affection for you anymore, but you will score a load of goals because you're a top player. So, and look, and it'll be almost a case of, right, give us one more season, do what you can, and then next summer we'll let you go to hopefully a European club rather than a Premier League club.
Jack, really appreciate your time. A passionate Newcastle fan, we love it. Jack Cunningham there, talkSPORT reporter from the talkSPORT website. I know you've got itching to say a few more things.
I was just literally going to say one little thing. Liverpool have just sold Luis Diaz.
Sure.
They are going to make that bid. They're going to flex their muscle in the next week. I'm sure of that.
If you want to have your say on the whole situation, 03717 223344. This is the Transfer Insiders, and we are on talkSPORT. It's the Transfer Insiders. We're on talkSPORT. It's Sam Ellard and the top broadcaster Harry Symeou with you until 10 o'clock this evening, bringing some breaking transfer news very, very shortly. But before that, Rangers away to Panathinaikos this evening. Champions League second qualifying round. They're 2 up from the first leg. And Paul Mitchell, as things stand, Rangers looking good to go through.
Rangers are looking good, but they will have to survive a VAR check. Filip Duric has got the ball in the back of the net. It was a cross on the right-hand side. The flag went up. I have to say, I think it's onside, and I think Panathinaikos thinks so too. It's taking a long, long time. Simone Souza is our Italian referee. It's an all-Italian squad. Valerio Marina is the VAR. Now, they've been at this for at least 2 minutes now. Rangers and Panathinaikos both going round the match official. It was one of these crosses from the right-hand side. It just drifted across. Duric had made his run across, and he just headed it right back across Jack Buckland. It landed in the back of net. Celebrations cut short very, very quickly from the flag, but this VAR check is continuing. This is pivotal. Rangers I think they've looked comfortable at the start of the second half. Panathinaikos haven't been as quick with the ball at the start of the second half. They racked up 11 or 12 chances in the opening 45 minutes, but the referee is still telling the players at the moment to stay away, stay calm, and as it stands, it's 0-0. It's 2-0 to Rangers on aggregate, but we are awaiting the result of this VAR check, and as referees do all across the continent, Sam, the old hand to the ear waiting for message to come. I think the goal's about to be given. Panathinaikos are celebrating. The square has been drawn. The goal has been given. Panathinaikos have their first goal of the tie. Filip Juric makes it 1-0 on the night. Rangers still leading on aggregate, but 56 minutes played. It's a long way to the final whistle, and the home team have made the breakthrough.
Wow, there we
Listen
go.
to that roar.
There we go. Well and truly game on. We've got a text has come in. Eddie Howe and Richie Hughes played together at Portsmouth back in the day. They're mates. Liverpool will know what Newcastle's realistic stance is on Isak long before they bid.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm not sure that I'd go as far as sort of suggesting that the two of them are sitting there exchanging text messages over.
Could you imagine?
What's a realistic bid? Eddie, how much do you think we can get him for, mate? Hold on, let me go and ask the chairman. And I'll come back to you.
I'm going around to his house for a Chinese and I'll let you know what he says. No, but look, potentially the fact they have got a close relationship, you know, maybe therefore Richie Hughes might have a slightly better idea and understanding than, you know, given his relationship with Eddie Howe, which is understandable.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, Liverpool would have known that Alexander Isak was keen from before they made that approach.
Because they wouldn't have made that approach.
They wouldn't have made that approach, exactly, if they didn't believe that there was something in this. Now, as I said earlier, you know, it looks like with Luis Diaz going out the door, Liverpool, you know, they might be working on a deal right now. They might be working on a bid right now, and we just haven't got wind of it yet. But I'm sure in the coming days, you're going to hear some movement on this.
More transfer news on Liverpool shortly, but a bit of breaking news coming into us. It's a David Ornstein exclusive that Chelsea have reached a total agreement for the Ajax defender Jarell Hato, who will travel to London to complete his medical. Deal is until 2023. The fee is just above 40 million euros plus a sell-on. It's 19 years of age. Defender. It's a centre back, isn't he? That can play our full back if needed. And I think with Chelsea, I think the João Pedro signing, Liam Delap signing, really, really good. I'm still seeing Chelsea being linked with players like Alejandro Garnacho, you know, Morgan Rogers, more attacking players. I would say, looking at the balance of this Chelsea team, they are well stocked in attacking positions. I also think the midfield, certainly towards the end of last season, was functioning a little bit better. I think we saw the best of Moises Caicedo. I think Enzo Fernandez had his best season. I think Lavia, when he got himself fit, was really, really good. I just think that back five is where now all of the energy and money should go on. So I think, again, young player, haven't seen loads of him, but I think players like, you know, Chalobah and Colwill and Tosin, I think are good players. I think what they've needed is someone with real experience to come in and play alongside them and just guide them, and that will make them a much better player. And I'd also say, you know, Chelsea next season, any talk of challenging for the title, they will get nowhere near any of that next season with Sanchez in goal. So I thought an experienced centre-back ideally was needed, and I think a new goalkeeper as well, Harry.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I think Jarell Hato is a really exciting defender, though. He's someone that has been on the radar of a lot of top European clubs for quite some time. You know, Arsenal were heavily linked with him at one stage. You know, shortly after they signed Jurrien Timber, it was kind of like, well, Jarell Hato's the next one. He's the one that you should be looking at. Chelsea have paid a decent amount of money to get him in, but this is perfectly in line, isn't it, with Chelsea's transfer policy of late, which is go out and bring in the best young players that you think are out there. And once you've got them in through the door, they'll either work out for you or they still retain some sell-on value, don't they? And we've seen Chelsea do this with loads of players in recent years. Look at people like Noni Madueke, who they brought in at a young age, one of the most exciting young players at the time. They've managed to sell him on for 50 million quid. So Chelsea, this is what they do. They go out, they scour Europe, they find the best players. They even go and scout in South America as well. They've done all of that really, really well. They bring these guys in. And at the beginning, when the sort of Clear Lake group were sort of in charge, I remember looking at their transfer policy and thinking, what is this? Like, you're spending big money on players. You're bringing them in on 7-8 year contracts. But actually, it's working out quite well because those players are maintaining sell-on value even when they're not pulling up loads of trees as Chelsea players.
More on that shortly. You mentioned the roar in Panathinaikos. They were 2-0 down to Rangers. They pulled a goal back. It was 2-1 on aggregate. Paul Mitchell, a second goal on the night. Who's it gone to?
It's gone to Rangers, and Rangers were brave. They made a change. Jiri Gassam came on. He came on in the first leg and scored to make it 2-0. Russell Martin changed him for Finlay Curtis, brought him on. Danilo with a couple of chances blocked by the goalkeeper. It came back to Gassam, and I'll tell you what a finish off the right foot. Beautiful volley across everybody into the corner of the net. Rangers are level. This could be enough for Rangers on the night. It's Panathinaikos 1, Rangers 1. Rangers restoring their advantage on aggregate. They lead by 3-1.
Paul, thank you very much. So Rangers in decent position there to get through to the next round of their Champions League qualification campaign. Harry, one deal that was done today is Luis Diaz moving from Liverpool to Bayern Munich. The package in total is going to be 75 million euros. He's a 28-year-old. He had 2 years left on his contract at Liverpool, and I think it made it pretty clear that he wanted to go this summer. Signed in 2022, won 4 major trophies with the football club. I'd say that from a Liverpool point of view, I think he was a really, really good player. Possibly at times the only frustration, he could be a little bit inconsistent. Like I think when he was good, he was really, really good. Could have a big impact on the game, but maybe there'd be periods in the season where he'd maybe go a little bit quiet. But I think from a Liverpool point of view, we mentioned the players that have come in. Virtus has come in, Ekatike's come in. We've obviously mentioned Alexander Isak and Salah's still there, Gakpo's still there. Liverpool have made a €30 million profit on Luis Diaz, who's nearly 30, 2 years left on his deal. So much has made Liverpool's, players that have come in. But something Liverpool have done so well for so many years under FSG, and while Michael Ellard has been there, is they sell players and they get really, really good fees. They're players that lead the football club. Love Luis Diaz, great player. But I think from Liverpool point of view, this package is great business.
Yeah, and when we were talking earlier on the show about another potential deal, I said that when I look at a transfer, I split it in two. Does it make footballing sense? Does it make business sense? In this case, I think it's the other way around. I'm not sure it makes footballing sense, personally. I would have kept Luis Diaz. From a purely footballing perspective, I think he's a threat. I think he's explosive. And I think, Liverpool, I beg your pardon, are going to lose a little bit of that
but
by
with
letting him go.
With Gakpo, with Ekatike, with Salah, with Ellard, and possibly Alexander Isak.
Yeah, but are they explosive in the same way? I'm not saying that they're not good players. They are, but they're different types of players. So this feels like a kind of transition that we're seeing from maybe what Klopp preferred to what Arne Slot is looking for, which is a bit more maybe technical ability, but maybe less of that explosiveness,
pace and power.
Exactly. But I think from a business perspective, this makes complete sense. You've mentioned the profit that they've made. You mentioned his age. You mentioned what remains on his contract or remained on his contract. And I think so from a business point of view, Liverpool were right to take this deal.
I think so. And also possibly with Liverpool, I think Darwin Núñez is clearly a player Liverpool want to shift, and I think we can all understand why 3 years in. It clearly hasn't worked out. A player I'm interested in is Harvey Elliott, because I think he's a really good player. I like him a lot, but since Arne Slot's been Liverpool, I think he's made it pretty clear that he just doesn't really seem to fancy Harvey Elliott. I mean, he only really played after the league was won.
Where does he fit in, though?
Well, he doesn't. I mean, as I mentioned, the players that are at the football club, loads of options there in attacking position, lots of options in the midfield. Just wonder whether maybe this summer here, this would be a time for the football club to get money on a player that Arne Slot, I think, doesn't particularly fancy, and also for the player at this stage of his career, does he need to just now go and play football week in, week out? Possibly a West Ham and Fulham he's been linked with?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like Harvey Elliott's stuck in a bit of a time loop at the moment. He's not getting the opportunities at Liverpool that his talent deserves. He's playing for the under-21s when he's older than 21. It just feels like he's stuck in a bit of a time loop, and he needs to take that next step in his career. And maybe if that next step goes well, he'll be knocking on the squad door for the seniors of England as well. And it's time for him to move on. And I think Liverpool stand to make good money and make another big sale again this season.
And we mentioned the Diaz fee, the Núñez fee, and the Elliott fee. Could possibly not be too far behind what maybe Newcastle want. The latest episode, by the way, of Inside Liverpool is also out right now on talkSPORT's YouTube channel. Myself, Jermaine Pennant, Tony Evans, talking obviously all things Liverpool. One thing Tony Evans said to me, very well connected with Liverpool, he thinks the Liverpool this summer, they sign Isak, and he's also adamant they're going to sign a centre-back as well, which I think is interesting. But linked with Mark Gahey, we've got Ibu Konate. The club has only got 1 year left on his deal. Obviously, Kwanzaa left the football club. So you could say to Liverpool, with Van Dijk, Konate and Gomez there, but Konate 1 year left on his deal, the signing a centre-back is also quite important this summer.
Yeah, it is important because it feels like that's a position where Liverpool lack a little bit of depth. Obviously, the Konate situation is a unique one in that, you don't know what the future holds beyond next season for him at this moment in time. So I think that's an area that they need to address. But everybody, I think, is taken aback by how much Liverpool seem to be spending this summer. I'm not surprised by it at all. They kept their powder dry last summer. They only brought in Chiesa. The January window wasn't a busy one either. And so, when you look at all the numbers and you look at all the financials and how much headroom they have with regards to PSR, I'm not shocked in the slightest that Liverpool are having a really big summer. And listen, they stand a great chance of really cementing their place at the top of the Premier League and finally winning back-to-back Premier League titles.
There we go. The latest episode of Inside Liverpool is out right now on talkSPORT's YouTube channel. It is 8:30 when we come back from the break. This week on the Transfer Insider, the show's been taking a bit more of a deep dive on the 3 promoted teams. So far this week, we've discussed Sunderland and Burnley in good detail. Up next, we're doing Leeds United. How are they looking ahead of their return to the Premier League? We're doing that next on talkSPORT. Hello, good evening. You're listening to talkSPORT, the Transfer Insiders. Sam Ellard and Harry Symeou with you until 10 o'clock then. It's the Sports Bar this evening with Natalie Sawyer and Darren Ambrose. But do not forget that this weekend, the WBA World Title shot is within reach for Oscar Duarte and Kenneth Sims Jr., who will seize the victory in Chicago, Illinois. You can watch this Sunday live on DAZN. Sign up at dazn.com/boxing.
Boxing update on talkSPORT with DAZN, the global home of boxing. Buy now at dazn.com/boxing.
Now this week on the Transfer Insiders, we've taken a little bit more of a deep dive on the three promoted sides that have come from the Championship to the Premier League. Really done. Burnley and Sunderland in particular have been very, very busy. So tonight we'll focus on Leeds United. Leeds won the Championship last season on 100 points and are back in the Premier League under Daniel Farke. 7 players have arrived already this summer. So let's now get a little bit more of an insight onto where Leeds are at and how Leeds fans feel going into the new season. Thomas Bradley from I'd Rather Be Leeds joins us now live on the Transfer Insiders. How are you, mate? Good evening.
Evening, guys. How you doing? Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
We're good, thank you. So, Thomas, a busy summer then. 7 players have already come through the door. Just give us a bit more of an insight onto some of those players and who you're most looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I think the obvious theme with the signings we've made so far is players with a lot of height and physicality. Players who are well over 6 foot, centre halves, well over 6 foot, big strapping goalkeeper. Players that aren't necessarily flashy on paper, the likes of Sean Longstaff, who I think is going to be a very important signing, and players who have come in around a similar budget range as well, sort of that maximum of sort of 18 to 19 million pounds. So I think the sort of entertaining, attractive signings are maybe still to come in the form of a winger with flair and a striker. But it's clear to see that Daniel Farke and the club are taking a certain approach heading into the Premier League. And I think they're really going to hone in this season on one being better at defending set pieces and another one being better at set pieces, because they're probably going to have the approach that we are not going to have the amount of possession we had in the Championship, and we may spend a lot of time under the cosh from especially the bigger teams. So can we hit them on set pieces? Can we be a bit more physical in our approach? I think last season we had some standout performers like Tanaka, but he wasn't the most physical of player. So to bring in the likes of Anton Stach from Hoffenheim is an indication the club is going for a bit more physicality and a bit more ability to break the ball up more.
And are you happy with that approach, Thomas? I mean, obviously saw, in particular Burnley under Company 2 seasons ago, and last season Southampton under Russell Martin kind of play out from the back and stick with that throughout the majority of the season. It just didn't work in terms of this approach. How Leeds are going about their business to try and stop. Obviously we've seen the last 2 seasons the 3 teams have gone up and straight back down. Do you think they're going about their business in the right way?
Yeah, because I think what they've done is they've highlighted a key weakness of Leeds of even the last couple of seasons. Games where we would dominate, but we'd lose out to a set piece or a free header. We've had problems with Meslier in goal. That's obviously now being addressed with the signing of Perry from Lyon. So I think they are thinking we can keep maybe a similar style of play when we get the ball, but out of possession, we are going to be a lot more physical and a lot more sort of targeting those areas where we have been weak in the last few seasons. I think that is, it's a strategic start to the transfer window. It's not going too over the top in terms of trying to spend 30-40 million pound on players that are yet to be proven. It is going for a sort of mixture of players who have had a decent pedigree of where they've come from. I think in particular Longstaff, I think he is maybe one of those players who's often sometimes underrated for what he does, but we need that sort of player. We need that sort of player who's going to keep running and running, get stuck in and not necessarily be the player who's always going to be the sort of on the back pages, scoring the goals, doing the glamorous assists, stuff like that. He will be a key player for us if we are to stay in the Premier League.
Thomas, can I just ask you about the manager, Daniel Farke? There was a debate, wasn't there, when Leeds were first promoted about whether or not the decision would be sort of taken to maybe move on from him because he hasn't got a great record when he's come up into the Premier League. And, I'd imagine, I think if you're, really into Leeds United as a sort of owner, as a chairman, and you're doing your due diligence, you probably would have had a look around to see who else was available. Is that a decision that ever crossed your mind? Would you have ever considered, had you been in charge, moving on from Daniel Farke, or do you think that's harsh given that he's the one that's brought you back up?
Yeah, I think he's maybe naturally gets labelled with failing in the Premier League with Norwich. I think there's a bit more to it perhaps in the sense of they didn't spend a huge amount of money, and I think Leeds do have a bigger profile in Norwich and a bigger sort of opportunity to grow back into a team that we used to be in the Premier League. I think some of the concerns from Leeds fans were that we were the best. We had the best squad in the Championship, in my opinion, and we kind of proved it, or we were matched by the next best squad, which was Burnley. But I think sometimes fans saw the sort of style of play as almost too boring, if that made sense. And I think that's still a very sort of late hangover from how exciting we were under Bielsa, because if you look back to before Bielsa, we had 16 years of very mediocre football, very inconsistent, going through manager after manager. And after Bielsa, Farke is our most consistent thing we've had. Obviously failed at the first attempt in the playoff final. People argued that we should have got up automatically with the players that we had. That was seen as a bit of a failure. The club stuck with Farke. He's got them up with a record 100 points. Some people would argue, well, we maybe should have got more than 100 points with the players that we had. But I think for me, going into this Premier League season, to have sacked a manager or replaced a manager who got 100 points would be a risky strategy. And I mean that from the sense of you've then got to bring in a new manager who potentially wants a new style of play. He wants to potentially replace players that Farke wouldn't have replaced, that have been consistent in the team. All of a sudden, you create this situation where if you then get rid of Farke, nobody would have known whether he would have done well for Leeds in the Premier League. Whereas I think the best approach, in my opinion, is to give him that opening chance. And if it does go wrong, then the club is still able to address it hopefully as early as possible. But I think for him to be sacked after 100 points would have potentially backfired too much if a new person came in and didn't succeed very quickly.
I think he deserved the opportunity to take them up and to have a crack again in the Premier League. Thomas, when teams come up, scoring goals can often be, an issue. They kind of jump up from scoring plenty of goals in the Championship to the Premier League. We know is a completely different kind of landscape. You mentioned there the big, strong physical players that have come in to make leagues harder to play against. Is there enough quality, do you think, in that final third to score enough goals this season to keep you up?
I think the difficult thing is, obviously in the Championship there was, because we were free scoring. The sort of question mark is probably at the moment around Peru up front. He scored 19 goals in the Championship last season, but in many games last season he kind of would sometimes be a passenger. I've noticed in pre-season though that he looks a bit leaner. He won the club's bleep test, as trivial as that sounds. He looks like he's sharper with footwork. I watched when we played Manchester United a week or so ago. He looks sharper on the ball, and that's really important in the Premier League. So I think there's a big opportunity for him to prove the doubters wrong, but he probably still does need somebody with that extra bit of quality alongside him to keep him competitive, and maybe not solely have him as the main striker for the time being. Unless he really hits the ground running, then the club may reassess, because we brought in Mecha from Germany as well, so he's got a chance to prove himself, albeit a free signing, so it's low risk. But yeah, there will be question marks over the final third, and the club has been heavily linked with Muniz from Fulham, so they're obviously active in terms of trying to bring somebody in. So we'll have to see what happens in that respect.
Back-to-back seasons, Harry, the three have come up, have gone back down, and in particular last season it wasn't even close. A confident Leeds fan here. Sunderland, we know, have been very busy and very active in the window. If one, or possibly even two of the teams that come up do stay up, who do you think is most at risk of going down?
I think most at risk will be Burnley. I think when you look at their sort of business in terms of the promoted sides, I don't think they've done enough. I think there's going to be too much focus on keeping hold of players that they had on loan, rather than going out and bringing new ones in. So I think they're going to struggle. Out of Leeds and Sunderland,
of the teams in the Premier League at the moment, most likely to go down instead of the three that have come up.
Of the teams that are in the Premier League currently, or were in the Premier League last season as well. Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I'm going to say that Brentford are in danger.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that Wolves could be in danger. I think West Ham United are a massive football club with massive support, but they could be in danger. I think there's a fair few clubs that have really struggled at the back end of last season and got away with it because of how poor the three that came up were.
Yeah, for me, I think Wolves be most at risk. The thing with Brentford is, like, on paper, what they've done this window just looks awful, right? The best manager's gone. Their best players gone, and possibly more players have gone. New players, the new managers come in, very inexperienced, but it just feels like they're such a well-run football club. They must have something up their sleeve from now until the end of the window to make sure that they stay up. But Thomas, thank you very much for joining us, and I bet you can't wait to get going.
Yeah, I honestly can't. I'm really excited. I'm really hoping we can give it a good go and become the team we used to be in the Premier League. So yeah.
Thomas, thank you very much for joining us downstairs.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, Thomas.
I'd rather be Leeds joining us on the show. We've been looking at all the three teams that have come up this season on how they get on, and yeah, it'd be great, isn't it? Great to see Leeds back in the Premier League. But in particular, Brentford, I agree with you. They've done so well for so many years in the Premier League in terms of punching above their weight, being shrewd in the transfer market. But they've got a busy couple of weeks, don't they, in terms of giving Keith Andrews the plays that he needs. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes, 18+. BeGamblerWare.org. It's Sam Ellard and Harry Symeou with you until 10 o'clock this evening. Then it's the Sports Bar tonight with Natalie Sawyer and Darren Ambrose. Up next, we're just going to turn our attention away from transfers for a little bit to tell you about something very interesting. The NBA is coming to Europe. We're talking that next. A very good evening. It is the Transfer Insiders. We're on talkSPORT. Sam Ellard, Harry Symeou with you until 10 o'clock this evening. Then it's the Sports Bar, of course. Lots of live football to bring you this weekend. The League One, League Two seasons getting underway. Luton versus Wimbledon in League One is live on talkSPORT 2 this Friday night at 8 o'clock. On Saturday at 12:30 on talkSPORT 2 in League One, Cardiff versus Peterborough. Lots of live football, but also as well the British and Irish Lions. They of course clinched their first series win in 12 years. This weekend's third and final test, the Olympic Stadium in Sydney, is an opportunity for the team to create history and become the first Lions team to a clean sweep a series in almost 100 years. They're 2 up with 1 to go. There was last time out a special comeback, and that comeback was well and truly inspired by a master of her craft, the two-weight undisputed world champion Katie Taylor, who shared a pretty emotional message with the lads about what it means to really dig deep to be victorious.
I'm recording this fresh off the back of the last leg of a trilogy of undisputed title fights with Amanda Serrano. I'm aware that you're in the heat of a trilogy of your own. There's no right to win. It must be earned every game.
Hugo Keenan to the left hand side to win it! Hugo Keenan scores the try!
Every fight.
Brilliant three-punch combination from Katie Taylor.
Every tackle.
Swahili gets absolutely melted by Tom Curry.
Every minute. I know that even if it isn't pretty, I am 100% confident that I will go to the trenches if necessary.
They fought for history!
That's a matter of will. So here's my message. Prepare to win by skill, but be ready to win by will.
Gliding to the right-hand side!
It's a big honor, boys. Take it with 2 arms like Faz said.
In both our sports, it is often the case that the biggest will to win takes the spoils. I hope all the performances are worthy of your skills, but if not, I'm confident that your will and your courage will be enough. After all, what else could it mean to be a lion?
That's a brilliant there, Katie Taylor, a powerful and emotional message to the Lions squad. And of course, the Lions absolutely flying. Harry, I don't know how much you've watched of the Lions, but it's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, remarkably, that first test was almost a little bit too easy for the Lions, the way they went over to Australia, and it was like men against boys, absolutely dismantled them. But then Saturday just gone a much, much tighter affair. An amazing comeback from the Lions very, very late on. So they're 2 up with 1 to play, and of course can make it 100 years since they last had a clean sweep. You can hear the Lions' third and final test live and exclusively right here on talkSPORT this Saturday. Our coverage starting from 10, kick off at 11, and make sure you head over to talksport.com to read more on Katie Taylor's speech to the Lions. Of course, the Lions on Saturday morning. Now to switch gears to the NBA, and they've just announced pretty big news, a 3-year plan to have the league playing regular season games in Europe. The games come to Berlin and London in 2026. We got Manchester and Paris in 2027 and Berlin and Paris in 2028. So big news there coming out of America and over here to the United Kingdom. Joining us now to give us a little bit more information is talkSPORT senior US reporter Brian T. Smith. Brian, it's big news. How exciting is this for England and also, of course, the NBA?
It's really big. This has been a long time coming, right? So the NFL is obviously, as you guys know, been playing in London for years. You've been at Tottenham. They're in Brazil. They're expanding, and the ultimate hope for the NFL is that in 3 or 4 years they're able to add an 18th game, an 18th regular season game, and what that will mean is the NFL, every team, all 32 teams, will play 1 international game, either home or away. The NBA will tell you that the NBA's been ahead of the NFL with international growth, and this is the next step for the NBA to have regular season games in London, in Manchester. It'll be the first NBA regular season game in Manchester at the new Co-op Live Arena. I've been there to see a concert. That is a fantastic state-of-the-art arena in Manchester. They're going to be in Berlin. They were in Paris last year. So this is where it's going, guys, with American sports trying to expand, trying to raise the growth, to increase the revenue, social media, all those different things. This is a big, big step for the NBA because, as you perfectly pointed out, and we have this all covered at talksport.com today, this isn't the preseason. This is the regular season. These games will count.
Brian, I find this fascinating because, you know, I've certainly seen the growth of American sports here in the UK over the last few years. Friends of mine that are hugely into the NFL, friends of mine that are really big into kind of NBA. I'm not as across these two sports that I've just mentioned as I probably should be, and I'm definitely not across the NBA. It's not something that's ever really kind of gripped me, but not because it's not great, just because I'm so football centric in my outlook, and I feel like in the UK that is the way that we are in a lot of cases. But if I look at it from a football perspective, right, if you told me that my club Arsenal were going to go and play a regular season game in America and they wouldn't be at home and they wouldn't be away and they'd be at a disadvantage because of that, that would annoy me, that would irritate me. Now that's because we look at football through the prism that we do, and that's what we're used to. I'm just interested to gauge what the feeling around this is like in the States. Are they okay with this? Do they understand that it's for the betterment of the sport and to get it to a wider audience? And so is there an acceptance of this? Because if this happened with football and we were going over to America to play regular season games, people would be up in arms. So I'm just trying to gauge what the feeling's like over in the States about this.
I love everything you just said. And I've been here for 2+ years living in London and been to a ton of Premier League games, and you could not be more right. If you did this, if you're Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, you go down the list and you have a game that's going to be on your pitch, and you take it and put it in America, you're rioting, you're going crazy, you're burning stuff down, right? That's not happening. And I've had this conversation a lot on White and Jordan, that it is different in America because they understand it, they see the money, it's a betterment of the league. That's part of it. I think the other thing that's important is that in the NFL, and ironically, NFL fans will accept this because they've been conditioned to it for the last 10 or 15 years. But in the NFL, they only have 17 games. So if you lose one home game, that's big. The NBA, it's not that big of a deal because they have 82 regular season games, 41 at home, 41 away. You have the preseason, you have the playoffs that last 2 months. If you're the Orlando Magic, It's cool if you're a fan and you get to watch your team in London, you get to watch your team in Manchester, you get to see Paolo Banchero, the Memphis Grizzlies with John Morant, and they take over the O2. I was covering Team USA last year before the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, where they won gold medal with LeBron James and Steph Curry at the O2, and I rode the tube and wrote about it all for talkSPORT at talkSPORT.com. The O2 was absolutely buzzing. They sold it out. Incredible atmosphere. It won't be exactly the same when it's the Memphis Grizzlies and Orlando Magic, but that place will be packed. And as you guys know, London is so international, and there's so many people that move here. They live here temporarily. They're here as tourists. They will have no problem filling that. And I think if you're a Magic fan or you're just an NBA fan, it's just more of a cool experience. You're not losing Arsenal for one match and going crazy. You're just kind of enjoying the whole thing. And ultimately, it's spreading the growth of the NBA across the globe.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, having you mentioned there, you made a great point about how we feel in this country if it was to go abroad. Do you think we'll ever see that? Do you think we'll ever find, there's always been that talk about that kind of 39th Premier League game. I mean, is that something you think would happen?
I think it could happen at some stage.
Money talks?
Money talks. And, ultimately, you do this for the globalization of your sport. I think where the Premier League's in a really strong position and maybe doesn't need to take this step is that it is global already.
Sure.
And I feel like when we're talking about American sports, we call them American sports because the audience is predominantly in the United States, whereas you look at the TV rights deals for the Premier League and it's beamed out all across the world. So I think the Premier League can probably resist doing this longer than most other leagues in any sport can. And so I hope that they don't do it. But I can understand why, if you're an American-centric sport, you would want to do this and you'd think that this is the right step for sure.
Would you agree with that, Brian?
I 100% agree. I think that's perfect. I think the Premier League has done a nice job where you're going to play these summer meaningless preseason matches, so to speak, in America. We just saw the success, the ultimate success, as Donald Trump will tell you, of the Club World Cup and Chelsea and the growth of that game. But football, the real football, as you know, is so international, right? With the World Cup and the Euros, on and on and on. I don't think the Premier League really needs to do any more growth. I think the Premier League is just fine. And if I'm the Premier League, I don't screw it up. What makes the Premier League special is that it's so international, and you have to be there. That's the beauty of living here, actually, and being able to experience it. You can watch Premier League in America. You can wake up every Sunday at 6 a.m. and watch your favorite team until you're actually in the stadium and you're walking there and you're taking mass transit and doing it. You're seeing 1/1000th of what it's really like. The Premier League, I would never have a regular season game in America. If I'm the NBA or NFL, I'm having regular season games internationally because they want to grow their leagues internationally and continue to make more money.
Yeah, well said. Brian, you're our senior US reporter for our wonderful website, talksport.com. This is a massive story. What else is doing well on the website? What else can people look out for?
Shedeur Sanders, Aaron Rodgers, we cover it all. NFL. And here's the thing, the NFL season kickoff is just about a month away. So we have expanded coverage all at talksport.com. And you can't go to talksport.com without finding 20 NFL stories a day. So it's all there for you guys. Thanks for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
There you go, man. Brian T. Smith, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Brian T. Smith, who is our senior US reporter at talksport.com. Big story there. The NBA could be coming to Europe and on a more permanent basis. The games to come in Berlin, London 2026, Manchester, Paris 2027, and Berlin and Paris in 2028. They'll be playing regular season games in Europe. We are approaching 9 o'clock on talkSPORT. When we come back, we will be talking all things Arsenal with Harry Symeou.
Corinthian Casuals are a team in the Combined Counties League Premier Division South. Despite that, they're one of the most important clubs in world football. Here's why. The club was formed in 1939 as the result of a merger between Corinthians FC and Casuals FC. Now, Corinthians FC were founded in the late 1800s when the FA's top brass were sick of getting pumped by Scotland every time they played them. As a result, a man called Nicholas Lane Jackson set up an amateur side which would bring in the best players who could all play for the national side. And it worked. It wasn't long before England were dominating the international fixtures they played, and it was largely down to Corinthians. In fact, in 1894 and 1895, they played consecutive games where Corinthians provided the entire England 11. But the thing is, the players refused to play professional football. They didn't believe in it. They wanted to spread the values of sportsmanship, competition, and played for the love of the game. It also helped that most of the players were Oxbridge graduates who didn't need the money. But instead of entering the league and cup competitions, they played exhibition football and toured the world, bringing the beautiful game with them. And it was this which spread the game throughout the world and made it so popular. Most famously, in 1910, they travelled to Brazil. And the locals in Sao Paulo were so impressed, they started their own team under the same name. Yes, the same Corinthians who won the FIFA Club World Cup in 2021, one of the biggest football teams in Brazil. Now, they were global superstars, and despite not being professional, Corinthians drew in the crowds. Everybody wanted to play them, everybody wanted to watch them. So much so, they regularly played the winners of the FA Cup in what eventually became the Community Shield, winning most of the time. They actually inflicted Manchester United's worst defeat, 11-3, a record which still stands to this day. Now, fast forward to today, Corinthian Casuals still don't pay their staff or players. The ethos of sportsmanship is still at the heart of everything that they do. And even though they're a side in the lower leagues, if you make the trip to King George's Field in Tolworth just off the A3, you'll most likely bump into Brazilian Corinthians fans who often make the pilgrimage across the globe just to watch their founding team play.
Very good evening. It's just gone 9 o'clock. We're on talkSPORT. It is the Transfer Insider, Sam Ellard and top broadcaster Harry Symeou with you until 10 o'clock this evening. Then we're heading over to the sports bar with Natalie Sawyer and Darren Ambrose. Plenty more to come in the next hour, bringing you up to date with all the latest transfer news, done deals and rumours from what's been a busy 24 hours. Very shortly, we're talking about Harry's beloved Arsenal and what he's made of their transfer window. But full time in the game between Panathinaikos and Rangers, Champions League second qualifying round, and Paul Mitchell, Rangers through to the next round.
Absolutely brilliant night from Rangers. Had to survive a really intense first half from Panathinaikos, but they got in level at the break. They did concede after 53 minutes. Filip Juric with a goal from a header. It took a VAR check, very long VAR check, although it did look onside from the off. That gave the 1-0. Russell Martin decided to make changes, took off Finlay Cursus, who scored in the first leg, brought on DJ Gassam, who scored in that first leg as well. He came off the bench to score at Ibrox. Well, he came off the bench to score at the Olympic Stadium. Stunning goal on the hour mark. Panathinaikos, well, they threw everything at Rangers, but Rangers coped with it comfortably. And now Rangers are through. They'll play either Servette or Victoria Pleasant. They're currently going into the second half of their second leg. It's 2 each on aggregate there. But what a night for Rangers in Athens. It's finished 1 apiece, but Rangers progress on aggregate by 3-1.
Paul Mitchell, thank you very much. There we go. Well done to Rangers and Russell Martin through to the next round in the Champions League. Harry, let's now talk about your football club. You make no secret about it. You're a big Arsenal fan. You love it, don't you? So we know that Victor Gyökeres is an Arsenal player. The long, drawn-out saga of the summer is very much done. It was well reported at the time that you were going after him, is that it's going to be Victor Gyökeres plus a left winger. Where do you think Arsenal are at in terms of that? I spoke to Ben Jacobs earlier about Eberechi Eze and him having that release clause, and there's Palace contract, and Arsenal maybe not sure about getting that deal done in terms of the way that the release clause, kind of the payments are being constructed. Do you think Eze will be Arsenal, though, coming into the window?
If I were a betting man, I'd probably say yes at this stage. It sounds encouraging. It sounds like Eberechi Eze wants Arsenal. It sounds like Arsenal have opened dialogue with Crystal Palace. And that's the first step, isn't it? It doesn't sound like there's any sort of animosity between the two clubs. And I'm not suggesting that there would be for any sort of other reason other than sometimes, you know, when you come in and you seemingly unsettle a kind of big player for someone, you can get a horrible response sometimes. You can get a bit of pushback, and it doesn't feel like Crystal Palace are doing too much of that. It doesn't feel like they're kind of really sort of stamping their feet, rebuffing Arsenal's interest. It sounds like there is a dialogue and a conversation to be had here, which gives me encouragement. In answer to your question about whether I think, you know, what you said about Arsenal getting a striker and a left winger in, I can't see Arsenal going out and getting a left winger and Eberechi Eze. Now, some people have been reporting that actually the pursuit of Eberechi Eze and the interest in Eberechi Eze is separate to the interest that Arsenal have in a winger. Now, I don't believe that to be the case.
No, I thought it'd be I meant Gyökeres and the left winger.
Yeah, but
which would be Eze.
Which would be Eze.
Sure.
But there's a lot of people out there reporting that because Eze is more of a central player in the eyes of a lot of people, that actually Arsenal would still be open to the idea of bringing in a left winger on top of Eberechi Eze.
I'd be gobsmacked.
I'd be gobsmacked. I can't see that happening. I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah.
Eberechi Eze feels like a great signing because he brings some of the skills that Arsenal were lacking, in my opinion. Bit of spontaneity around the box, bit of creativity, spark. That versatility. He can play from the left, as we've just said. He can play in a more central area as well. That also would give me more reason. I think if I were Mikel Arteta going into the boardroom trying to pitch to the people that signed the checks about, you know, getting Eberechi Eze in through the door and stumping up the money, I would put that across. I'd say he can play in multiple positions and he'd cover us in multiple areas. So that's a positive. The only thing is, you know, are Arsenal going to get close enough to what Crystal Palace want? That's the only kind of reservation I have. You know, they've got that release clause and it's a bargaining chip for Palace, isn't it? Because while it is there and we understand, I think it expires towards the end of this window, just before the season starts. In fact, I read earlier today. I think for that reason, you know, Crystal Palace might just dig their heels in for a bit. And this could be one that goes on into the second and third weeks of August. I wouldn't be surprised.
Have you heard any alternatives being suggested for that sort of left wing if it's not Eze? Because it feels like maybe other than him, it's gone a little bit quiet, perhaps?
Yeah, we heard sort of at the start of the window reports linking us with lots of players. You know, Rafael Leao was one that was mentioned. Yeah. There was Anthony Gordon, Rodrigo. All these names have been mentioned over the course of the summer. But the one that has consistently been there in terms of the reporting is Eberechi Eze. And, you know, you just get the feeling that this works for everybody. And I know that I just mentioned that Crystal Palace might.
Palace, does it?
I think it works for Palace as well.
Go on.
I think it works for Palace for this reason. Crystal Palace have a player there that obviously has really high stock at the moment. He's won the FA Cup. He was instrumental in that. But he's only got 2 years left on his current Crystal Palace contract. If Crystal Palace do not sell Eberechi Eze this summer and they hold on to him for another season, they then find themselves in a position where he's got 1 year remaining on his contract.
And he goes for half that price.
And he goes for half that price.
Or for free.
Or for free at the end of that season. Yeah. And nobody in their right mind, when he gets to sort of 28, 29 years old, is going to come along and say, here's £68.5 million to trigger that release.
Absolutely.
So for Palace, they won't say this publicly and they won't want to publicise this, obviously, right? But they will know. Steve Parish is smart enough to know that if he doesn't cash in big on Eze this summer, then he won't. And to be fair, if you get 65 million, if you get 60 million, that's still a lot more than you stand to get in the future. And I think with Eze, it feels like there's a good relationship between him and Crystal Palace. And I feel like and we were talking about Isak earlier on, I feel like if Eze makes it very clear that he wants to go to Arsenal and Arsenal get close to that price point, I think there's a deal to be done here.
It's interesting because I agree with everything you said in terms of how good Eze is as a player. He's going to come in, improve the Arsenal team. We've known for a long time, right, that release clause is in that contract. Why do you think, though, that it's taking Arsenal so long? You know, this Premier League season starts in a couple of weeks' time. There's been interest for a long time. The release clause has been there. Why do you think it's taking Arsenal so long to make their minds up on whether it's Eze or not? Because you imagine by now, weeks of conversations between Arteta and the people that are dealing with the footballing operations. The only thing that surprises me is that we're sat here on nearly August and they still haven't made their minds up on whether they want to push or not push. What are they waiting for? They must know by now whether it's the right player they want or not.
Because I don't think you can completely make up your mind until you open negotiations. I think you can have an idea, right? You can go into a summer and say, I want to get this player, and that player. But once you start having the conversations with the clubs, with the players themselves, only then do you understand what's possible and at what price. And only when you have all of the information can you make the right decision. I think they've obviously had some kind of communication with Crystal Palace. And as I say, it doesn't feel like this is being shut down by Crystal Palace. It doesn't feel like they're very defensive in their stance. It feels like they are open to doing a deal, but the price has got to be right. I think for Arsenal, there have been other priorities in the window. I know that people keep saying that a winger, someone that can come in on that left-hand side, is a big priority. But as we're talking right now, you've still got Trossard and Martinelli. You've brought Madueke in who can play on either flank. You know, you've got a multitude of players in that Arsenal squad that can cover that position. Whether you think they're up to the standard or not, and whether you think that you need to upgrade on them is another conversation. The priorities were getting in a midfielder and a backup midfielder because we lost two very experienced midfield players, and bringing in the centre forward. And now we've done that, I think you're going to see the focus shift. But sometimes you need dominoes to fall into your place. You know, sometimes you need things to work out. You need players maybe to depart. You need to have clarity with regards to what your wage bill is going to look like. And that might not necessarily mean completing the outgoings before you move for Eze, but having an idea like Zinchenko. Let's use Zinchenko as an example. Is he going or staying? Well, it's likely that he's going. So we're likely going to make a saving there. You could say the same thing about people like Reece Nelson. You know,
even Trossard's been linked with a move away.
Even Trossard's being linked with a move away. The point I'm trying to make here is that sometimes you just need to have a clearer view of the picture and have a clear outlook before you can commit to anything.
Yeah, I think something as well. I think Arsenal have done really well this window that I think they should get credit for. As I think in the last couple of seasons, as Arsenal have been going for the title, they've been pretty much working with a squad of kind of 13, 14 players, and it feels like it's quite thin. Whereas I think this season, something they've done, as well as signing Victor Gyökeres, who they needed to come in and lead the line, I think they're going to have much more strength and depth throughout the whole squad. Kepa, for argument's sake, backup goalkeeper. I think Norgard, you know, people sort of mocked that signing quite early on, but I think that sort of player to be sort of fifth or sixth choice midfield option is a good option as the season goes on. So I think Arsenal next season are going to have a squad of sort of 18, 19, 20 players to really pick from. And I think that strength and depth is going to be there throughout the course of the season. It's going to allow Mikel Arteta to rest and rotate, or not even rest, but just rotate players more frequently throughout the season that will benefit Arsenal as they get to kind of the final crunch moments of the season.
Well, if there's anything to take away from last season from an Arsenal perspective, it is that. It is the importance of having the depth and having the squad. Now, last season they had an unprecedented amount of injuries, all at the same time in some cases. All were severe injuries. It wasn't like you were missing key players for 1 or 2 weeks. These were 3-4 month injuries that we're talking about. And that really harmed Arsenal. But
that's fair.
By default, having those players come through the season with a cleaner bill of health makes Arsenal stronger. By default, they will be better this season than they were last season. So then you add into the mix the players that they've brought in. You add into the mix the players they might still bring in, Eberechi Eze, being the kind of main focus at the moment. And there's no reason to not look at Arsenal's window, I don't think, come the end of August and go, yeah, you know, they've done well here. They've put themselves in a position to challenge again. And that's all you can do. You can only put yourself in a position to challenge. Then it's up to your manager and your players to get you over the line. But I don't think as a fan, if they've got 6 in already, if you get a 7th and that 7th is Eberechi Eze, I don't know what more realistically you could have asked for from the club.
I'm surprised you didn't mention, you know, you were talking there about unlucky last season with player injuries. I'm surprised you didn't mention refereeing decisions.
That was a disgrace. Is it even worth discussing anymore?
Well, I don't know. You tell me.
It was an absolute disgrace, to use Mikel Arteta's phrase. And at least 4 of the 6 red cards that Arsenal got in the Premier League last season were a complete and utter joke and a shambles. But we're going to spend the entire season, Sam, complaining about the pitiful standards of the refereeing. And
there's a problem across the whole board,
because it's a problem across the board. But Arsenal suffered more than anybody else in the Premier League last season among the big clubs. And, you know, I'm going to be moaning about this probably for most of the season. So I don't want to start the campaign by talking about this kind of stuff. But I don't want to go into the season annoyed and preempting the bad officiating. Because that's a given, unfortunately, in our league.
Yeah, across the whole board, though.
Yeah, but this idea, though, that it evens itself out. Now, there have been other seasons.
That's never been factually proven.
That's nonsense. Yeah, that's nonsense. There have been other seasons where Arsenal have probably had their fair share of decisions go their way. I'm not saying that, Arsenal are the only ones that ever get impacted by poor officiating. But last season especially was a difficult one to take from an Arsenal perspective.
That's fair. I think there's a few red cards early doors for kicking the ball away, which
nonsense.
Felt hard. You just want consistency, don't you, across the whole board. One more on Arsenal. We mentioned there are a couple of players leaving in terms of Nelson, Zinchenko and Trossard. In particular, a player like Reece Nelson, who feels like you almost forget he's at Arsenal. He's been there for a long, long time and never really come close, has he, to kind of breaking into that first team again? Is he the sort of player that at this stage of his career needs to go and play football? I think he's been linked with Fulham, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he went out on loan to Fulham last season, but he had to come back because he picked up an injury. Reece Nelson's really talented, really, really talented, really tricky.
What hasn't it worked out for him then, do you think,
fitness? I think fitness more than anything else. There was a period the season before last when he was in and around the first team, and I personally felt that he deserved more opportunities than he got, and that didn't work out for whatever reason. That the manager decided to go down a slightly different route, but ultimately he went to Fulham. They were really impressed with him at the start, and then he picked up this injury. I understand why Fulham are a little bit reluctant to commit funds to this, though. It's understood that they want him on loan with an option to buy at the end of it. I completely get that if I'm Fulham. I know Arsenal, in an ideal world, would want to get some money in, but with his injury record, I don't think that's realistic. So let him go, let him play football, and you stand to earn something rather than nothing in sort of 12 months' time. Let him go and play, let him go and show what he can do, and hopefully he can stay fit.
Is this the season then for Mikel Arteta?
You hope it is.
To get over that, you do.
You hope it is. It's been a real enjoyable at times, but also heartbreaking at times ride over the last couple of campaigns. So, desperate to see Arsenal get over the line, of course, but I'm trying to manage my expectations and my emotions. I'm not going in saying we're going to win it.
No, but you said to me earlier when we were coming up that, last season Arsenal went in as title favourites. This season have probably had what feels like one of their busiest windows in a long, long time. And on paper have had a really good window in terms of the players that have come in. Yet next season are obviously not going to go in as favourites due to the season that Liverpool have had. Yeah. And you maybe made the point that could work in Arsenal's favour. But all the expectation, all the pressure is going to be on Liverpool to retain that Premier League.
Yeah, but I don't think Arsenal failed last season because of the pressure. Like, I prefer not to have the pressure, and I prefer to go into the season with Liverpool being seen as the favourites by everybody, with people talking about Manchester City's revival. I prefer that. But the pressure is not what made Arsenal crack last season. And I get frustrated when people throw that around. And I'm not saying you did, but I hear it a lot. Whenever the pressure's on, Arsenal can't manage it. Arsenal can't handle it. Arsenal were crippled by injuries last season, and various other factors impacted them. I'm not going to go into it again. Impacted some of their results. And as a result of that, Arsenal were not able to compete at the level that they should have been. And you got to take the lessons from that. Sometimes you have seasons like that. You got to take it on the chin. You got to learn. Arsenal have learned because they've gone out and improved the squad, as you've mentioned. And fingers crossed, they'll have a bit more of the rub of the green next season.
Chris has texted in. Now we're really talking about Arsenal's red cards and injuries. Can we get the violins out? There we go, Harry. You've upset somebody.
Sorry, mate,
on this wonderful Wednesday evening. How dare you do that?
To quote the great Rafa Benitez, these are facts.
Well, the refereeing decisions go across the whole board, don't they? But we're not.
Well, if we had the time, we could go through every single one of them. I could show you the clips. And we could tear apart the refereeing in each of those decisions.
At 10 o'clock when we're off air, me and you will do that. Just gone 9:15 on talkSPORT. We're listening with the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with our very good friends at Ladbrokes 18+. BeGamblerAware.org. Coming up next, we're talking Chelsea. A new centre-half is on the way to Stamford Bridge.
live football. It's what we do best.
Plays it across the face of goal, and it's in! Bradford equalise!
Onto his right foot, shoots straight on, it's in! Tento Alambe turns in Jack Diamond's shot, and Stockport are level!
Oh, what a hit! Harvey Mills puts the push ahead!
Luton Town find themselves in the bottom three, back-to-back relegation.
Been here many times before, and I know that this club can get itself back into the Championship again.
Cardiff are relegated to the third tier of English football for the first time in 22 years.
Comes out to the edge of the area. Oh, what a goal! Miles Hippolyte, AFC Wimbledon are back at League One level after 3 years away. To the far post, Talavera! He's headed it in! Incredible! Plays it across the face of goal, and it's in! Bradford equalise!
And only one national radio station takes the EFL seriously, and that's this one.
A very good evening. You're listening to talkSPORT. It's Sam Ellard, Harry Symeou with you until 10 o'clock this evening. League One and League Two gets underway this weekend. talkSPORT is very much the place to be. We kick off Friday night with live League One commentary between Luton and Wimbledon. There's live commentary on talkSPORT 2. Then Saturday at 12:30, Cardiff hosts Luton, also on talkSPORT 2, before Adrian Durham takes you around the grounds, keeping you up to date with all the 3 p.m. kickoffs in League One and in League Two. So, of course, the talkSPORT network is very much your home of the EFL. Luton, Wimbledon, talkSPORT 2 Friday night. Then Saturday at 12:30, Cardiff versus Peterborough in League One is also another talkSPORT 2 exclusive. Harry Symeou is back.
Yeah, it's back, and I can't wait to see competitive football again. I mean, a lot of people were kind of sort of gripped by the Club World Cup. I got to be honest, I struggled with it at times. I think as it got into the latter stages, it became more interesting, and I was certainly paying more attention to it. But I got to say, just having competitive league football back is going to be special. And the EFL is brilliant. Like I've been working a lot more on it over the last few years. Lots of commentaries, lots of sort of reporting, and it's kind of opened my eyes a bit. Like, I'm not saying I wasn't aware of how good the EFL can be, and I wasn't aware of the stories and all the rest of it, but sort of working in it, you really kind of understand how important it is in this country. And everything that the Premier League is because it's propped up by the EFL, and we've got that really strong pyramid. I mean, you go to games in the third tier and there's 15,000, 20,000 people there. There's nowhere else.
Some of your away support as well.
Yeah,
you find lower down the league is absolutely staggering.
It's unbelievable. There's nowhere else in the world where you will find that level of support and commitment in the lower tiers of their leagues. It's just crazy. It's fantastic. Can't wait.
We have to wait a week for the Championship, but League One and League Two. This Friday evening gets going. Luton Wimbledon is a talkSPORT 2 exclusive commentary. A piece of news that we told you about earlier on this evening is that Chelsea have reached an agreement with Ajax to sign Jarell Hato. He is a centre-back that can play at full-back if needed. The fee is above 40 million euros, plus there is a sell-on. Pending the green light, but the 19-year-old defender wants to travel to London for his medical, and he wants to join Chelsea Football Club. If he does, the deal will be until 2032, so another long deal for Chelsea. Elsewhere as well, talkSPORT's Alex Crook has been telling us about Chelsea wanting to bring in even more attacking players. They're interested in Alejandro Garnacho and Javi Simons as well. When you look at Chelsea's attacking options in particular, and I'm probably going to miss one or two here, so if I do, please help me out, but Neto, Palmer, Delap, Nkunku, Jackson, Gittins, and even Mykhailo Mudryk is still a Chelsea player. They are absolutely stacked in attacking positions. When you look at those attacking options, the Chelsea really need to sign Alejandro Garnacho.
Well, this is what Chelsea do. They stockpile the best young players. That's what they do.
Well, that's not Garnacho, though, is it?
Well, I think Garnacho falls into that category. I think Garnacho is fantastic.
Why?
I think he's got so much to offer. If you put him in the right environment, in the right team, Garnacho has got it. He feels to me, I remember when he first broke through, I remember looking at him and going, this guy's clutch. He will pop up in the biggest moments and he will score you goals. And he's got that knack of being in the right place at the right time. He's intelligent in the runs he makes. A little bit unpolished at the time, but he'd obviously just broken through into the Man United side. I look at Man United and I look at how bad the environment has been there for such a long time now. I don't look at the young players that fail there as write-offs. You look at some of these players and you think you could work in a different environment. Just like I look at some of Chelsea's players. You know, we were talking during the break there about Madueke coming to Arsenal. Like, that's because Arsenal have looked at Noni Madueke and gone, all right, you haven't done amazingly at Chelsea, but we've seen enough. We've seen glimpses, and we believe that the reason you haven't kicked on is because you're not in the right environment. That's how I feel about so many of these young Man United players. I mean, look at Kobbie Mainoo. You know, there's no doubt he's talented, but what's happened to him?
A really good example was probably Scott McTominay, who was at Man United for many years.
Example.
Probably never really found his best position or a role in any Man United team, and then to be fair, he goes to Napoli and he has an amazing season.
Scudetto winner.
So yeah, talkSPORT's Ellard Crook saying Chelsea pushing to sign Garnacho as well as Xavi Simons. Garnacho is keen on the move, I'm sure he is, but United are pushing for a deal of at least £40 million. Then in terms of what I mentioned earlier, the centre-back coming in, Hato, you know, Chelsea, I think I said at the top of the show, stacked in terms of, we've got lots of good options in terms of those attacking positions, but, you know, in terms of being able to do anything next season, really push on and maybe try and mount a title challenge. I think centre-back to come in, I'd have preferred someone a bit more experienced to come in and really sort of help the likes of Colwill and Chalobah and Tosin, who've got lots of ability and potential, but maybe haven't quite found... They never quite found the right pairing, have they, at Chelsea, in terms of who his best two centre-backs are. And I'll still say it one more time on this show, they will do nothing, I don't think, until they go out and sign a better goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think the goalkeeper's the bigger need. I think, you know, Sanchez, I think the jury's out on him still. He makes mistakes. I know that in part that's because of some of the instructions he's given with regards to playing out from the back. And I think we have to sort of condition ourselves to understand that goalkeepers asked to play that way are going to make more mistakes than the goalkeepers did when we were growing up. Right? We've got to accept that because the demands from the manager put them in that situation. It's high risk, high potential reward, those managers and coaches would tell you. I'm not sure I always see it like that, but I think with Sanchez, like, he's gone to the Club World Cup, he's done okay. He's had a few good performances.
He was great in the final, wasn't he?
He was great in the final. He's been given this trophy, you know, goalkeeper of the tournament. And then it's like everybody's forgotten that he's not actually at the level that Chelsea require. You know, they're going to be in the Champions League next season. They're the world champions. They need to kick on. They need to keep upgrading. And it feels like they keep going out and recruiting in lots of different areas. And that's great because their recruitment policy, I think it came under a lot of scrutiny initially. But when you look at what they're able to do in terms of sales as well, and that they've gradually improved as a team, you have to say over time it's worked. But they're missing that fundamental piece, and that's a top goalkeeper for sure.
Yeah, and also having covered games for talkSPORT, it is incredible how every time he gets the ball at his feet, how kind of the atmosphere inside the stadium just changes. Obviously, like, you know, he said he's been told to play a specific way. He doesn't look anywhere near comfortable enough to do that. And every time he gets the ball, you can almost feel the Chelsea fans is sort of, you know, worry of a mistake. And I dread to think what that must be like for him as a goalkeeper, because I almost feel sorry for him sat watching him and listening to the Chelsea fans get nervous, and also what impact that must have on the rest of the team as well.
Yeah, for sure. You know, a goalkeeper is supposed to bring stability to a team.
Yeah.
And, you know I sound like a right old miserable so-and-so saying this, but the way that we've sort of morphed our goalkeepers into something different in modern football, in terms of them being asked
you
to
are
play.
sounding like a granddad now.
And they're playing as the last line of defence at times with the ball at their feet, and they're being pressed and closed down and taking risks. It creates a nervousness and an anxiety among the supporters. But when you consistently make mistakes the way that Sanchez has, then that anxiety is going to come to the fore each and every time you're involved in a situation whereby people are sort of, you know, a little bit nervous or concerned. So I don't blame the fans for feeling that way. It's difficult for the goalkeeper, yes, but that's only there, and that anxiety only exists largely because you've made mistakes. It's not just because of the style. That's part of it, but it's because you've made errors.
Yeah, way too inconsistent, and it looks like though they are good. I think Maresca's got a lot of faith in Sanchez. Even throughout last season, there were times where he could have changed the goalkeeper, but didn't seem to do it. It is the Transfer Insiders. We're on talkSPORT. We're with Ladbrokes, is 18+. BigGamblerWare.org. Sam Ellard, Harry Symeou with you until 10 p.m. this evening. Next up, we'll run through the top stories of the day.
on 1089 and 1053 medium wave, on DAB, online, and on your smart speaker.
Totally topical transfer talk.
Fabulous stuff.
The Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT.
A very good evening. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with me, Sam Ellard, and Harry Symeou. Benjamin Sesko could be on his way to Manchester United. We'll talk about my club, Liverpool, and the transfer business that has been done. Alexander Isak has been the talk of the week, of the window. We'll discuss where we think he will end up, and we'll get Harry's thoughts on his beloved Arsenal. This is the Transfer Insiders, and we are on talkSPORT. Let's start though with our talkSPORT exclusive, as Manchester United are said to be going in for RB Leipzig's Benjamin Sesko ahead of Ollie Watkins. talkSPORT's Ben Jacobs gave us the latest.
Yeah, broken exclusively by myself and chief football correspondent Alex Crook. Manchester United sent a delegation to Germany to start formal talks with Leipzig. Discussions have taken place with intermediaries as well. And this comes after Manchester United moved a list of 3, Ollie Watkins, Nicholas Jackson, Benjamin Sesko, to 2. They went to Aston Villa. Villa said not for sale. Manchester United felt like that was not a definitive not for sale, but 60 million and Villa needing a replacement. And therefore, they've pivoted to Benjamin Sesko, who was also always on the list. And this is move being driven by Christopher Vidal, the number 2 to sporting director Jason Wilcox. And the talks at the moment are both on the club and the player side, and there's even a possibility that Manchester United try and chuck in a player as well. Rasmus Højlund is the name that's been mentioned, although it may be difficult because Leipzig don't have any kind of European football. In terms of the player side, it's important to note that Newcastle is still there, and they are waiting to see whether Sesko perhaps picks them because of Champions League football. And if he says yes to Newcastle, then I actually think the club-to-club negotiations between Leipzig and Newcastle will be quite smooth, because Newcastle are prepared to pay pretty much the asking price of in excess of £65 million. Manchester United may wait for the player buy-in. If that comes in the coming days, their offer is likely to be closer to 55 or 60 million, and then it will all depend on whether Leipzig drop the price or stick to this number of basically 80 million euros. So it's a fascinating saga. I know Newcastle fans will kind of be listening and thinking this is what happened with several other targets. We got in there first, player went to another club. It's not necessarily as clear-cut in the case of Benjamin Sesko, but Manchester United are confident of agreeing terms on the player side. Club-to-club negotiations with Leipzig, though, may be a bit more complicated.
So, Harry, here's the big transfer story of the day. Manchester United wanting Benjamin Sesko ahead of Ollie Watkins. We've had plenty of texts in. Watkins or Sesko. Where are you at with this? Do you think Manchester United are making the right call?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Manchester United's approach in this window has been to go out and bring in Premier League proven players. And you'd have thought that Ollie Watkins would have been the solution in this case. But they've obviously taken a shine to Benjamin Sesko. They really like the player. Look, there's a huge potential upside with Benjamin Sesko. I've said this before. I think he's someone that could potentially go on and be one of Europe's top strikers, but he's not quite there yet. And I don't know if Man United maybe, I've talked about wanting Premier League proven based on the business they've already done. Do they feel like they've got enough of that already in Mbeumo and Cunha, and so they can afford to go and get Benjamin Sesko instead and gamble on that upside coming through over the next few years? Is that the way they're looking at it? Is it not a, black and white, either Premier League experienced or not? Are they instead going, well, let's find the balance within our squad? Maybe that's the way they're looking to do it, and they're looking to tackle the situation. If that's the case, my club were heavily linked with Benjamin Sesko.
How did you feel at the time when you were linked with Sesko?
I always preferred Gyökeres. I always said that I felt like Arsenal were in a position to win now. And in order to do that, they needed a more accomplished striker, ready-made striker. But Man United's project is different. Man United's project is at a completely different stage and phase, if you like. Man United are at the stage where they're building to try and make themselves competitive again. They're not challenging for the Premier League title. So it's a completely different thing and a completely different remit, and therefore their kind of search terms, if you like, are going to look very, very different. But for me, when I looked at Sesko, I felt he was a little bit raw. I felt he was one of those players that probably looked better when you watch the highlights than when you watched him in full.
Sure.
And there's a lot of players out there like that. But you can see the potential. So I won't sit here and say it's a bad move if Manchester United land him, but where I'm curious is how much is this going to cost? We know that he essentially was priced out of a move to Arsenal by his club. We heard whispers, although they were never confirmed, that his demands on a personal level were quite lofty, and I don't think that went down particularly well with Arsenal. So is he going to do a deal with Manchester United for less? And if so, is this still possible? We'll see.
Interesting. Elsewhere, a done deal that was confirmed early this morning. Luis Diaz from Liverpool to Bayern Munich. The package in total will be 75 million euros. 28 years of age, had just 2 years left on his contract. Signed in 2022, won 4 major trophies. Liverpool, by the way, since Richard Hughes has come in as sporting director, have bought £190 million in sales. For me, Harry, I think as a Liverpool fan, I think he's been a very good player for the football club. My gut just told me, though, that this felt like a good deal for Liverpool in terms of we're making a €30 million profit on a player that, you know, has 2 years left on his deal, didn't want to sign a new contract. And I think given the players that have come in, you know, Wirtz and obviously Ekitike, there's a possibility of Isak as well. And then you've got your Salahs there, obviously your Gakpo's there, possibly Harvey Elliott could be there. I think this is a good deal for Liverpool. Been a good player, won trophies, making a profit on a player with 2 years left on his deal.
Yeah, I think it's great business from Liverpool. From a purely football perspective, I would have probably been a little bit disappointed if I was a Liverpool fan with the fact that he's leaving, because I think he's someone that really kind of endeared himself to the Liverpool faithful.
And he leaves with real genuine love between the fans and the player. But I don't think there's any bad blood there. He wants a new challenge. He wants something a little bit different. Again, I said we're getting a decent fee for the player, so it's all. When you compare that to other transfers that players have left the football club this summer, it's obviously chalk and cheese.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not suggesting that there'll be any bad blood or anything. I just think from a footballing perspective, Diaz gives you something a little bit different to the options that Liverpool have otherwise. You know, I think I talked about it earlier. He's explosive. He's someone that can get his head down and dribble, take players on, commit players. And I love that kind of fast and furious style that he plays with. It is a bit Jurgen Klopp, though, isn't it? And so when you're moving on to a slightly different style, which I believe Liverpool are doing, based on the signings they've made, I think that you're
more sort of technical players.
Yeah,
want to take the extra touch, the extra pass, a little bit less direct.
Yeah, I think it's going to be less rock and roll and more sort of classical from Arne Slot. I'm partial to a bit of both, I've got to be honest. Right. But I feel like Arne Slot is putting his stamp on the squad now, and he's slightly changing the approach and letting Luis Diaz go and potentially bringing someone like Alexander Isak in with the majority of the funds. You know, that's a great bit of business too. It's a great move. Liverpool don't lose here, but I just think if I were a Liverpool fan, I'd be a little bit sad to see him go, because I think he does bring a lot to the table. And as you mentioned, the relationship is great. And Liverpool, more than most other clubs, are an emotional football club. And I think for some fans, they'll feel that way.
Yeah, interesting as well what else Liverpool can do in terms of, we'll talk more about Alexander Isak in a second, but a decent fee there for Luis Diaz. I think in terms of other players maybe leaving, I mean, Liverpool are, I think, desperate to sell Darwin Núñez, and I think would love to get some sort of fee for him, and also someone like Harvey Elliott as well. Been in the football club for a long time now, hasn't quite found his kind of place, his kind of role in the team, and also as well, lots to talk about Alexander Isak and bringing him in, but I think Liverpool as well were really interested in bringing in another centre back as well. Kwanzaa leaving for Bayer Leverkusen, obviously Van Dijk and Gomez are there, but we've got Konate with just 1 year left on his deal. In terms of what Liverpool are doing, what they're building, is there a worry for you as an Arsenal supporter that this is a Liverpool team that isn't going to just be strong next season, but can you see a way in which this Liverpool team could dominate English football for the next, say, let's say, sort of 5 or so years? Can I do what City done, go 4 in a row?
Yeah, I think they could. Because if you go back to when they were at their peak under Jurgen Klopp, you always had that threat of Manchester City, which made it difficult to sit there and say with any real conviction that Liverpool were now going to go on and dominate for a number of seasons. Manchester City's powers have waned. We saw that last season, and they're going through a big transition in terms of the volume of players in and out, and it's a bit uncertain what you're going to get from them. Arsenal haven't hit the heights that Manchester City did or Liverpool did during that era where those two were going toe-to-toe just yet, because they haven't won a Premier League title. So I think when you look at the business coupled with all of that, there's no reason why, if you were a Liverpool fan right now, you wouldn't be feeling confident that this team can go on to make it back-to-back titles, can have a real impact in Europe, and can establish themselves as the big force in English football for the next 4 or 5 seasons. Because look at the ages of the players that they're signing. Hugo Ekitike, Florian Wirtz. These are young players. Milos Kerkez. These are players that are still on the upward trajectory. And that would give you lots of sort of encouragement, I think, as a Liverpool fan to say, you know what, this is our time.
So the big news today, Luis Diaz officially a Bayern Munich player, and Manchester United stepping up talks for Benjamin Sesko. Elsewhere, Chelsea have reached an agreement with Ajax to sign the defender Jarell Heto, and talkSPORT understand Alex Crook that Chelsea are still pushing to sign Alejandro Garnacho as well as Xavi Simons. Garnacho is keen on the move to Stamford Bridge, but United are pushing for a deal of at least £40 million. This is the Transfer Insiders, and up next we'll discuss Alexander Isak and Harry's team Arsenal. Yeah, this is the Transfer Insiders with me, Sam Ellard and Harry Symeou. Let's now turn our attention to Newcastle and Alexander Isak. The saga that continues to rumble on and on and on. We know that Liverpool want Alexander Isak. We know that Alexander Isak wants Liverpool. There's been reports that personal terms have been agreed. Alexander Isak hasn't gone on Newcastle's pre-season tour, but yet a fee has not been agreed. We even understand that a bid from Liverpool hadn't yet gone in for Alexander Isak to Newcastle United. Newcastle fan, a passionate Jack Cunningham, gave us his thoughts on the matter.
I mean, okay, it's understandable you want the move, but ultimately I was adamant that Isak wouldn't leave this summer, and that was based on a couple of things. One was the fact that Newcastle got Champions League football. I felt that on the pitch, in the time that he's been there, I don't know what more Newcastle could have done to prove to him that this is a club that is going in the right direction and is in the place to win things. If you think about it's 2 seasons in the Champions League since he's been there, and also won a trophy finally. So on the pitch, totally see no issues there. So I based it on that. I also based it on the fact that if Newcastle are going to be the #1 club in the world, which they keep telling us that that's what they want to be, then you can't sell your best player to a potential rival, a Premier League rival. If you want to challenge for the Premier League, you can't then sell Alexander Isak to Liverpool, because then you can forget about challenging Liverpool for 4 or 5 years. You're not going to get anywhere near them for that period of time. Isak is that good. He's that important. And then the other reason I didn't think would sell him is I didn't think this would happen. I didn't think he would necessarily, refuse to go on pre-season tour. Okay, look, we don't officially know that is the reason, but the thigh injury that he has, the scan came back clear. I've been saying this as well. Look, it's a pre-season tour, it's commercial. If the injury is a little niggle, he gets on the plane and he goes along, he does all the PR stuff. He's Newcastle's best player. You know, these fans who are watching Newcastle in Asia want to see Alexander Isak. There's no reason, if this injury is as small as it is supposed to be, that he'd be staying at home.
I don't know whether, as a Liverpool fan, I don't want to get too excited about, you know, the prospect of Alexander Isak, who I think, by the way, is the best centre forward in the world right now. I know that some people say Erling Haaland, but I think in terms of the way Liverpool play and kind of at times last season we saw that centre forward, you know, coming deep. Even though Luis Diaz sometimes last season sort of played as a false nine, coming deep, linking play. I think Alexander Isak's all-round game is better suited to Liverpool than, let's say, an Erling Haaland. And I think the one sort of main strength that Haaland's got that Isak maybe doesn't have is kind of that real sort of power in the air. But I think for Liverpool, Isak is perfect. Maybe I'm just being a little bit negative here and I don't want to get too excited, but I'm talking to people like it is an absolute given. It's an absolute certainty that Isak will be Liverpool next season. Check some of the odds out. It's, you know, odds on he's playing for Liverpool next season. Are we underplaying the fact that he's got 3 years left on his deal? Newcastle seem, at the moment, to be struggling to bring in a replacement. Is there a chance that Newcastle would just say, he's got 3 years left on his deal, you're not giving us what we want. I don't care that he's not coming on pre-season, he wants this, he wants that. It doesn't matter. We're in a position of strength.
There's a chance, and it's not done until it's done, of course, but generally, based on recent examples and based on recent evidence, the players get what they want. And ultimately, I think Alexander Isak, by refusing to go on the pre-season tour and by creating this kind of bad blood with Newcastle United, I think he's going to push them into a position whereby they have to move him on. And it's the combination of things, right? It's like if you're Newcastle United, it'll be like the wall closing in on you from both directions, because it'll be Alexander Isak making your life really, really difficult. And then you start to question as a football club and wonder whether he's going to be able to get his head right to go again next season.
Of course he will, Harry. Of course he will.
But as a football club,
come on,
in that moment of panic, when you've got this guy telling you that I want out, I want to leave. And also, there's the other thing as well, right? There's the optics of it. Because
could I pick you up on that in terms of not being in the right headspace? So he doesn't get the move, and what are you then saying that all of a sudden, when Alexander Isak bears down on goal in front of the Newcastle fans at James's Park, because he wanted Liverpool a month ago, he's therefore going to become? I don't understand. He's going to become a bad finisher?
No, that's
I don't
what
understand.
I'm saying.
I don't understand this logic of all of a sudden he's going to down tools. What, is he going to refuse to play next season in a World Cup year? Is he not going to try his best? He's not going to fight for the club. I think it's possible to want to move away, to push for Liverpool, but then also not get that move and still come back to the football club and score 30 goals next season.
Yeah, of course it's possible. I'm not saying that Alexander Isak's going to go through on goal and put it wide on purpose.
No.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that you're not going to get the best version of Alexander Isak.
I disagree with that.
At the start of the new season, until he's able to refocus.
I appreciate maybe until the window closes, which is a few games into the season.
Fine.
But after that, which is what normally traditionally 2, 3, 4 games in, he scores his first goal of the season and everything. He's too good to become a bad player.
But we don't know what Alexander Isak's character's like. We don't know the guy. We don't know how difficult he might find it to refocus. We don't know how convinced he is that the Liverpool move is on. And if it fails and falls apart, and it gets to let's say it goes into the last week of the window and then it falls apart and he realises there's no breakthrough. Things like that aren't easy to get over for players. I'm not saying he's going to down tools and not play, but I think you're going to lose a part of what makes Alexander, or has made Alexander Isak great, which has been his focus. That is going to be impacted. That is unquestionable, in my opinion. But then, you're saying, you don't know if it's going to happen, and I get that, and I appreciate that. Newcastle do have a position of strength with regards to his contract length, but at the same time, you want to put out big club energy, right? And in one sense, you want to do that by saying he's our best player, we're not selling him. But at the same time, you don't look like a big club when you desperately keep hold of players that clearly don't want to be there. Why not? Because part of being a big club is going, well, our club is bigger than you, and if you don't want to be here, we're going to cash in and get our money. That's also representative of being a big club.
I disagree with that completely.
Is Alexander Isak bigger than Newcastle United?
But I don't understand how, by being a big club, as soon as a player wants out, you just give him...
It's not as soon as a player wants out, is it? It's not. This has obviously been something that's been going on for ages. He was promised a contract that he never got. Okay, he's obviously been looking at things at Newcastle for a while and realised. I've heard rumours.
Go on.
That going into the back end of last season, he was unhappy. I've heard stories that he was adamant at that point that he wanted out of Newcastle United. This wasn't Alexander Isak, happy as Larry, got a text message one morning from someone at Liverpool who said, come on, let's have you over here. And all of a sudden he's gone, I don't want to play for Newcastle anymore. This has been months and months and months in the making, maybe even years. So this idea that he's going to be able to just flick the switch and get over it if it potentially breaks down, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's how he's going to play out.
I completely disagree with that. He might want the move. Clearly he wants the move. But I just do not envisage a situation where if Alexander Isak is playing for Newcastle United Football Club next season, that this is a guy who is going to struggle to find the back of the net, that this is a guy who is going to stop working, fighting for the football club. I think both can be true.
So you think he'll be at 100%?
I think if Alexander Isak is a Newcastle player next season, he scores 25 goals next season.
But do you think he'll be at 100%?
In terms of
focus, want to be there?
Once the window closes.
Or will he be at 90%, 80%, 70%?
The window once
you think
closes,
there's no impact?
When the window closes, I think it's full focus.
You think it's full focus? You think it's 100%?
Yeah. We've seen this before where players don't get moves. And then, we're always like, how are the fans going to take to him? Oh my God, what's it going to be like when he's got to walk into the dressing room the next day? The first goal he scores at Newcastle in front of a passionate James's Park, I think you'd be surprised at how quickly this whole thing gets forgotten, Harry.
Football fans have short memories.
Football fans are fickle,
and we're the most fickle people in the world. Absolutely, I agree with that. But it's the player I'm worried about. And I think he gets his move. I do.
We'll finish, Harry, by talking about your beloved Arsenal Football Club. It's been a busy transfer window, and it feels as if, from what we understand, what we're learning is that it's now pretty much just that left wing that Arsenal want to strengthen, want to improve. And of course, the player that's been linked with Arsenal for a long time is, of course, Ellard, who's got that release clause in his Crystal Palace contract. What are you hearing, Harry? Do you think this is a deal that gets done?
Yeah, I think it is one that probably does end up getting done. I think it could be one that drags out towards the latter stages of the window. And I think Arsenal will be pretty relaxed about that because they've done the bulk of their business. And I think when you're in that position, you're more open, aren't you, to just dragging things out that little bit longer and just holding out for what you believe is the right deal. I mean, we saw them do that with Victor Gyökeres. We saw them not bow down to Sporting's demands early doors, and that caused a delay and everything, and it went on for a while. But ultimately, Arsenal got what they wanted in terms of the value of the deal. They got the Sporting president at the start of the window said he's not leaving for 60 million plus 10 million euros. And Arsenal got him for 63 million plus 10 million euros. All he managed to squeeze out of him in all of that time that they were deadlocked was an extra 3 million euros. What's that? £1.5–2 million. So that's the approach that Arsenal
for months of conversation about the player.
Exactly.
For all of us here, it wasn't worth it, was it?
No,
Come on, guys.
That's it. And Arsenal, I think, have adopted that approach in this window. And with Eze, who I don't think this is the case. I think we could really do with him. But I think the club will look at it and go, we still got Trossard, we still got Martinelli, we've got Madueke that can play on that side.
But Eze's a massive upgrade on those players. Massive upgrade, Harry.
He is. But I don't think Arsenal will see this as a critical signing. I think they'll see it as a nice addition if they can do it. I think
he's better than a nice addition.
I agree with you.
Much better than that.
I agree.
I think Arsenal have got. If I look at that 1 to 11, I mentioned earlier the squad depth improving a lot. That left wing is the only position. Like Liverpool are stacked now, pretty much 1 to 12. There was 2 great players in every position. I think that left wing is an area where you can get a much better upgrade on the players you mentioned. Eze is that. Look at what Liverpool are doing. The power, the strength they're showing in the window. Eze's a massive upgrade on those players. Go and get him.
I don't disagree with that, but I'm just trying to put myself in the club's shoes. When you've done the bulk of your business already, and you look at a player and you think, if the price is right, I'll take it. If not, I'll leave it, which is how I think Arsenal view as a football club Ellard Eze, then I think you're a lot more relaxed and you're happy for this to run longer if it means you get the better deal.
Okay, fair enough, Harry. This has been the Transfer Insiders. Don't forget, you can listen to the Transfer Insiders on the talkSPORT app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Harry Symeou, thank you very much for the last couple of hours. You're doing a little watch along, aren't you, tomorrow?
Thanks for having me.
The big North London derby?
Yeah, the North London derby being played.
Is it going to be tasty
across the world? I don't know. I hope not. I don't want anyone to get injured ahead of the new season.
Is there going to be a few little early challenges in?
Maybe. The game against Newcastle at the weekend was very physical for a pre-season friendly. Yeah. But we'll see.
Harry, good stuff. Thank you very much. This has been the Transfer Side of the show. Is going to be back same time tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Up next is the Sports Bar with Ashley Sawyer and Darren Ambrose. You know the number if you want to get involved with the guys. 03717 223344.